Thanks for joining us. I've got a pretty special group of people here with me. I've got the real Steve Friend. I've got George Hill, also known as the Senior Chief. I've got Garrett O'Boyle, and I've got our producer Ryan, and we are running this thing through kind of an exciting test stream. So we're using some technology that we haven't played out before. Bear with us, but I think you guys are going to be able to enjoy the conversation between a bunch of Suspendables. They'll be coming and going as it makes sense, and sounds like we're going to get a new whistleblower today, right, guys?
Ooh. Yeah, man. I'm anxious to see who this guy is. I guess apparently he retired, so he waited for to be in a state of grace, I guess, or beyond any sort of retribution, and then he's gonna. Here we go.
Can you guys hear Comer? I can't.
I've got no audio. Kyle, you got a good soundboard. Why don't you just do a Comer impression in your mic?
How about now? Can you hear?
I've got you, but not the.
Not the yeah, because it's muted
on the left side.
There you go.
Can you hear?
I still can't hear him.
Stand by.
Good thing I can read.
I'm a Marine, so it's hard for me.
I'll send you a box of crayons, George.
Thanks.
For a snack.
Maybe, George, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself while we're waiting for Kyle to get the audio set up?
About myself? Jesus Christ. You were mentioned today, Steve, in the PAS report by Professor Nick Giordano.
Okay. What did he say?
He was talking about your testimony and the .edu threat tag. I did a podcast with him the other week. He's a college professor. He has a different audience than some of the shows that we've been on, and I was going to put it to you directly in the form of a signal message, but I did offer Nick. I said, if you actually want to talk to the real Steve Friend, I can make that happen because I have both of your contact information. But he is he's kind of like Dr. Gorka, only without the accent. Highly educated, different target audience than a lot of the shows that we've been on, which is one of the reasons I reached out to him and got on his show, because I'm trying to reach different demographics if I can.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, I enjoyed the community notes on the FBI that I got. They cited my testimony in to correct their tweet about the school board threats.
Yeah, I got blown off by Congressman Jordan's office because Ray lied during his testimony and said that the lead regarding the Bank of America spreadsheet was rescinded. He lied. That lead was given to my SAC as late as January 23. And so, of course, being the hard-hitting investigators they are, it's like, well, have that agent who gave it to him, contact us. I'm like, he's not going to do it. He's scared shitless. He's an anti-vaxxer and a single parent. And you guys don't have a good track record.
I liked the Christopher Wray. We're not in the business of thing that he likes to do now. So they're like, hey, the FBI is doing A, B, C, and he just says, well, we're not in the business of doing A, B, and C, and thinks that's like his get out of jail free card. Yeah. So I think that all January 6ers, but certainly like any drug defendant who gets arrested by the FBI should just walk into court and say, I'm not in the business of selling drugs, and they should walk, right?
Yeah, no, it's a total thugocracy. I mean, it's almost akin to like, hey, it's a really nice place you got here. It's a shame if caught fire.
Yeah, he's a detestable person.
It's disgusting.
There we go. There we go.
Continues to be uncovered by our family's corruption. The Bidens have put themselves first and Americans last. We will continue to follow the money trail and provide the answers, transparency, and accountability that Americans demand and deserve. With that, I yield to the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. The Ways and Means Committee is charged with ensuring that the tax code is enforced fairly. Clearly, the president only believes in making taxpayers pay their fair share if they don't share his last name. These two courageous whistleblowers provided my committee with devastating testimony showing that the government is not treating all taxpayers equally, and the DOJ and the IRS gave preferential treatment to the president's son during a criminal investigation into his taxes. These individuals in front of us today are credible and set for nearly 15 hours of interviews with both Republicans and Democrats. I personally took part in the interview with Mr. Ziegler. Here's what we learned from the interviewees. The IRS recommended multiple felony charges against Hunter Biden for tax years 2014 through 2019, relating to at least $8.3 million in income from foreign companies, including companies based in China, Romania, and Ukraine. And that is the only amount discovered despite the roadblocks and obstruction their investigation faced. The Department of Justice engaged in a campaign to delay, divulge, and deny that investigation. They delayed investigators for years, leading to the expiration of the statute of limitations for many of the crimes involved. They divulged key investigative details to Biden's attorneys and even the president's transition team. And they denied investigators the ability to authenticate evidence, serve warrants, question witnesses, and bring charges. This led to Hunter Biden's sweetheart agreement, announced 5 years after the investigation started, but mere days before my committee voted to publicly release this testimony. Would Americans in my congressional district or any other congressional district ever receive this same treatment? After raising their concerns internally at the IRS, these whistleblowers were discouraged and demoralized and turned to Congress as a last resort. They bravely reported wrongdoing to us. And what have President Biden's allies, including Hunter Biden's lawyers, done? They've responded with a vicious smear campaign to discredit these whistleblowers and discourage others from coming forward, and may have even coordinated with the White House on this effort. This is a disgrace. I urge any IRS employee watching today, if you know of misconduct, please come to the Ways and Means Committee so we can hold accountable those who are responsible. And let me be clear, there will be zero tolerance for any retaliation against whistleblowers by DOJ and the IRS. The American people expect answers about whether the federal government is treating all taxpayers equally or if the wealthy and politically connected get special treatment. Our committees are working together to get to the bottom of this abuse of power, and will work tirelessly to do so and to make sure it doesn't ever happen again. Americans should not have to accept two tiers of justice in this country. One if your last name is Biden, and one for everybody else. I want to thank both whistleblowers for coming forward publicly and for your testimony today. I yield to Mr. Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. The question is, who are you going to believe? April 26th, in front of the United States Senate, the Attorney General said David Weiss is in charge of the investigation. October 7th, in a meeting with Gary Shapley, one of the whistleblowers, David Weiss said, I'm not the deciding official. Who are you going to believe? On February 28th, I wrote the Attorney General asking him why there's no special counsel in the Hunter Biden investigation. He didn't respond, which is unusual in and of itself. They always respond to the Judiciary Committee when we write something to them. I wrote again on May 25th. Again, the Attorney General didn't respond, but David Weiss did. And here's what he said, June 7th. He said this, I have been granted ultimate authority over the matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges. That's what the U.S. attorney said on June 7th. 3 weeks later, Mr. Weiss wrote me again, and he said this, I stand by what I wrote, but I wish to expand. Wow, already changing his story 23 days later. And he said this, my charging authority is geographically limited to my home district. Well, wait a minute. You just told me 23 days before you have ultimate authority. Now you change it. Then again, on July 10th, Mr. Weiss wrote Senator Graham, and he said this, paragraph 2, to clarify, I have not requested special counsel designation. Rather, I had discussions with departmental officials. Mr. Weiss can't get his story straight. 3 different stories in a 5-week time frame. On June 7th, he's Tarzan. He's super. I got ultimate authority. I can do what I want, file charges where I want, when I want, and how I want. June 30th, well, actually, no, I can't. And then, of course, on July 10th, he says, to clarify, I haven't requested special counsel status, but I've been talking to the folks at Maine Justice. 3 different positions in a little over a month. You know whose story hasn't changed? These 2 guys. Their testimony has been consistent. Throughout, their testimony has been the same. And guess what? 2 days ago, an FBI agent confirmed their testimony. Who are you going to believe? The Justice Department can't get their story straight, changed 3 times in 33 days, or these 2 guys? The Justice Department that was found to censor Americans just 2 weeks ago from the federal court in Louisiana, the Justice Department that said moms and dads are terrorists, the Justice Department that said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist, the Justice Department that can't get his story straight are these 2 guys. 10 years, over a decade of experience for each of them, the go-to guys in international tax evasion cases, the A-team when it comes to investigating these matters. All over the world they've done this and who've been consistent throughout. I think I'll believe these guys. I think they're the ones telling the truth. And that is fundamentally what this comes down to. So God bless you guys for the work you've done, the courage you have, and for being here today, stepping forward because you care about equal treatment under the law. That's what's at stake, plain and simple. I yield back.
I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Raskins of Maryland, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the witnesses. I thought we might be here today on the matter that the chairman declared as top priority, the crusade to find evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden. But now the majority's long-promised star witness turns out to be a fugitive from American justice, an arms trafficker indicted on 8 federal criminal felony counts and an unregistered foreign agent for China who tried to trade Chinese arms for Iranian oil. So I guess he's not going to be a witness for the majority anytime soon. Well, after the failed SARS reports, bank records, Form 1023, we can conclude that this inspector...
Wait, just because I like talking over Jamie Raskin, because I don't really care what he says. Are we trying to say that Gal Luft is going to be here? Is that what we're talking about? Did he just make that up?
Yeah, he said hey, I got a feedback, Ryan.
Have run dry time and again. Just yesterday, Mr. Chairman, you and I got a letter from Lev Parnas, the Ukrainian-born American businessman who was at Rudy Giuliani's side as his right-hand man for a year between November 2018 to October 2019, as Giuliani and then President Trump tried to smear Joe Biden before the 2020 election with the very same allegations we're still running through the political spin cycle every week in this committee. I request unanimous consent to enter the Parnas letter.
The audio for the feed, guys. Can I do that?
There's an echo.
No, you're good, Steve.
No, I'm good now. Okay. Yeah.
Can you still hear the audio feed?
I can't hear him, but that's, probably a win.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if we cancel this echo, for some reason, there's a software failure. But go ahead and talk up. Jamie Raskin is just
he's screaming about Loft should be there. There's a witness. And the only reason I'd listen to anything, because I was going to count the number of times he said Donald Trump in his.
Yeah, we'll make it a drinking game for later.
Yeah.
We'll just save our drinks for tomorrow.
I mean, it's a hearing about Biden family, but I'm sure that'll be the tried and true. That's what they tried to do to Garrett and Marcus and me.
I can just tell you guys, you're not missing anything. I hear him in the background.
Well, he's not a real titan of intellect, I don't think. And a legit question: what's his malady? What he's got cancer, right? What's his actual
Chemo.
But what type of cancer?
Bandana cancer.
I don't know. I don't make light of,
breast cancer.
I don't know what his cancer is. I know he's got chemo, and that's why he wears the bandana, which really, the do-rag just doesn't go with the suit. I mean,
no, it always looks terrible. It looks ridiculous. I wish he would just shave his head like a normal person.
Just shave his head,
or wear an eye patch and get a parrot. I mean,
yes, that'd be acceptable too. All right, I'm going to bring it back up.
Baseless conspiracy theories that this committee serves up as moldy leftovers every day. At today's hearing, we're going to hear about wrongdoing by Hunter Biden, who's pleading guilty on 2 tax charges and a gun charge next week. We'll hear about the back and forth among investigators, prosecutors, and a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, over a dozen people who spent 4 years investigating the president's son. We'll hear about how they disagreed on investigative steps and what criminal charges to bring, all normal stuff in government investigations that doesn't usually lead to a congressional hearing. But one thing you will not hear today is any evidence of wrongdoing by President Joe Biden or his administration. Like every other try by our colleagues to concoct a scandal about President Biden, this one is a complete and total bust. In fact, the ongoing case that the majority invites us to interfere with today is actually a striking illustration of the success of the American system of independent prosecutors operating under the rule of law and outside the realm of the kind of political influence my colleagues are trying to exercise today. So what happened? Well, the son of the sitting president of the United States lost his brother and then lost his way badly back in 2015. As too many families around the country know, drug addiction is a dark and powerful affliction. And like other addicts, Hunter Biden made foolish and criminal choices, including failing to pay his taxes and owning a firearm in violation of federal law. And he's now being held criminally accountable for it. His investigation began under the Trump administration. It was conducted by a U.S. attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, who Donald Trump appointed to his office and who Attorney General Barr chose for this assignment to conduct this investigation. In his final press conference in December of 2020, Attorney General Barr expressed full confidence in Weiss's work, saying it was, quote, being handled responsibly and professionally within the department. And to this point, I have seen no reason to appoint a special counsel, and I have no plan to do so before I leave. Furthermore, Joe Biden never publicly questioned or challenged this prosecution. When it began, he did not decry it as a witch hunt by Donald Trump. He placed his trust in the fairness of the American justice system. When he became president, not only did he not use his power to halt the investigation, he kept in place Trump's handpicked U.S. attorney, Mr. Weiss, overseeing it, even though incoming presidents usually replace U.S. attorneys with their own appointees. And his attorney general, Merrick Garland, made sure that Mr. Weiss, appointed by Donald Trump, had full authority and resources to pursue this probe and charge it however and whenever he saw fit in any district in the country. And in the past few weeks, as Hunter Biden accepted a guilty plea, the president and his attorney general have done nothing to interfere with the case, which is overseen by a federal judge appointed by, yes, Donald Trump. Now, can you imagine Donald Trump saying nothing about a witch hunt or not trying to quash the prosecution if it were his son being prosecuted? Indeed, President Biden's traditional and scrupulous respect for the independence of the Justice Department stands in sharp contrast to Trump's spectacular disrespect for the rule of law.
So he just said scrupulous respect for the rule of law. That was amazing.
Outside office to get prosecutors to go after and lock up his political rivals and to suspend accountability in specific criminal cases when it comes to his friends. When Michael Flynn was investigated for lying to the FBI and later convicted for it about communicating with the Russians, or when Paul Manafort was investigated and later convicted for bank and tax fraud, or when Roger Stone was investigated and later convicted for lying to Congress and witness tampering, an outraged President Trump repeatedly denounced the Department of Justice for prosecuting his cronies and reportedly got Attorney General William Barr to pressure prosecutors to recommend more leniency in their cases. Trump also went to FBI Director James Comey and pushed him to pledge absolute loyalty to Trump and to find a way to let Flynn go. Ultimately, Trump used the power of the presidency to pardon all of these convicted criminals. Now, unlike President Trump's blatant abuse of the rule of law and the relationship between the president and DOJ, there's no evidence that President Biden has involved himself in any way in the investigation into his own son, an investigation that's been overseen by Trump's appointed U.S. attorney. No matter what my GOP colleagues say, and I appreciate the testimony of our witnesses today, there is no evidence that Hunter Biden has received any kind of official favoritism in this prosecution for being Joe Biden's son. On the contrary, there are more than 10 million Americans who have filed taxes but failed to pay them, the exact crime Hunter Biden is pleading guilty to. The vast majority of these cases
so we're
are
going to sum this all
resolved
up and just say Hunter Biden didn't do anything wrong.
Civil settlement.
Jamie Raskin
Indeed,
has bad
every
fashion
year the
choice.
IRS and DOJ
Trump
obtain
is a bad
convictions
guy,
and sentences in
and
fewer than
apparently
700 cases
the Biden
for
family
tax
are
crimes of any
scions
kind,
of virtue
a minuscule
and,
percentage.
do exactly the way
The fact that
nothing
Hunter
Americans
Biden
should be doing
faced a
with their lives.
4-year
That's good.
criminal
No, start
probe
drinking, people,
involving
if you're
dozens
watching.
of agents and prosecutors from the IRS, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware, DOJ tax, demonstrates, to my mind at the very least, that he received no special treatment, but arguably selectively tougher treatment than the millions of the people who never face criminal investigation for doing the same thing. If my GOP colleagues think that the treatment of millions of tax scofflaws, or even the handful who face criminal prosecution like Hunter Biden, is too lenient, I invite them to join us Democrats in supporting the $80 billion in funding for the IRS that we passed in the Inflation Reduction Act last year. This money will enable the IRS to make long overdue improvements in customer service, but will also enable the agency to restore lost capabilities and enforcement to identify and prosecute tax cheats. But the very first thing House Republicans did this Congress was vote to rescind that funding while disparaging these future IRS employees who will do the same kind of work today's witnesses do. Senator Cruz called them Biden's shadow army. Senator Grassley said they will be going around ready to shoot some small business person in Iowa. Today, we get to witness MAGA Republicans take the side of IRS agents from the deep state against a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney and a rich guy exercising his Second Amendment rights, but now facing criminal gun charges and tax charges that they would call in any other circumstance.
Wait, he's a rich guy? I thought he was indigent and he had to take a private jet to go say he couldn't pay any money in child support.
They will describe their
Wasn't that what they said?
frustrations and disagreements with their supervisors, as well as with Mr. Weiss and his team of
That's why he's living at
prosecutors
the White House.
who they consider junior varsity and not up to snuff during the Trump administration generally. We will also hear about their
just put him.
profound misunderstandings
That's better.
about Mr. Weiss and how he
Hear him
reviewed the
less.
evidence and made the ultimate decision about charging Hunter Biden. A lot of the controversy here relates to the agent's failure to distinguish between special counsels and special lawyers, but we will clear that up today. The key point, Mr. Chairman, that America needs to understand is that the only political interference at play here.
So we
is
had
coming
Jamie
from
Raskin
Donald
now
Trump
just
and my
saying
Republican
that
colleagues.
the IRS is full of great, honorable
Testimony
people that need
and
another $80 billion so they can accurately go and get your money. But also,
Regular
there's
yield
whistleblowers
back.
and they're part of the deep
I'd like
state.
to remind the
It's
members of the
interesting, both
public that
sides.
Section 6103
Well,
of the
those
National
whistleblowers
Welfare
are
Information
IRS
Code
employees.
except in certain
Right.
So are they
circumstances. One of
bad
those
witches or
exceptions
good
is the
witches?
process the
They're
Ways
the-
and Means
exactly.
Committee used to receive testimony from these whistleblowers and report transcripts of their testimony to the full House of Representatives to make that information public. These whistleblowers have gone above and beyond to submit information to Congress in accordance with the law, and we are grateful to them for that. The witnesses can only testify to tax information that has already been released through proper procedures through the Ways and Means Committee. This means that in some instances, they may have to decline to answer a question and instead submit additional information to the Ways and Means Committee at a later date through the appropriate process. They are each accompanied by counsel to address questions that arise on Section 6103 and are not present today to provide testimony or answer members' questions. I ask members to respect that process and requirements of Section 6103 and look forward to hearing what our courageous witnesses have to say. Further, due to the complex nature of the matter at hand, each of the witnesses shall have 10 minutes for their opening testimony. I would now like to introduce our witnesses. Mr. Joseph Ziegler is a special agent with the Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation Division, specifically assigned to the International Tax and Financial Crimes Division. This is a group of 12 elite special agents who are subject matter experts in complex international tax and other related crimes. He started his career with the IRS in 2010 as a special agent and has
Just for the
developed
record,
successfully-
no IRS
and has
agent
developed
is
and
elite.
successfully completed a multitude of complex financial investigations. The types of investigations include money laundering, bank fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, healthcare fraud, violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, income tax evasion, and income tax related charges such as identity theft and filing false claims for income tax refunds. Mr. Ziegler has won multiple performance awards throughout his career in recognition for his work. And Mr. Gary Shapley. Mr. Shapley is the Supervisory Special Agent of the International Tax and Financial Crimes Group. Mr. Shapley started his career with the IRS in July 2009. He was detailed to the Department of Justice's Tax Division from 2013 to 2018, investigating foreign financial institutions. He was also assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force, working as a task force officer at both the FBI Washington Field Office and the FBI Baltimore Field Office. Mr. Shapley was promoted to Supervisory Special Agent of the Elite ITFC Group in 2018. He also served as the Assistant Special Agent in charge of both the New York Field Office and the Chicago Field Office. I want to again thank both gentlemen for their willingness to come forward and share their testimony today for the members of this committee and for the American people. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please press the button on your microphone in front of you so that it's on and the members can hear you. I recognize Mr. Ziegler to please begin his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, Chairman Smith, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. Today, I sit here before you not as a hero or a victim, but as a whistleblower compelled to disclose the truth. That said, in coming forward, I believe I'm risking my career, my reputation, and my casework outside of the investigation we are here to discuss. I ultimately made the decision to come forward after what I believe were multiple attempts at blowing the whistle at the Internal Revenue Service. No one should be above the law, regardless of your political affiliation. I humbly view my role here today as providing the facts as I best understood them and to let Congress and the administration and the public consider those facts and determine the best path forward. I recognize why I was present at the start of this investigation and was closely involved with the investigation for roughly 5 years. I'm just a part of the story. Others, including my colleague and Supervisor Gary Shapley, who is here with me today, have their own views and understandings of what took place during this investigation. I've been an agent with the IRS since 2010. In 2007, I received my undergraduate degree from Ohio University, my MBA from John Carroll University. Prior to starting my career at the IRS, I worked at Ernst & Young as an external auditor. Throughout my career with the IRS, I have worked a variety of successful criminal tax and money laundering investigations. In 2018, I transitioned to being a part of the International Tax and Financial Crimes Group out of the Washington, D.C. field office. I was the lead IRS case agent on the Hunter Biden investigation. I've recently discovered that people are saying that I must be more credible because I'm a Democrat who happens to be married to a man. I'm no more credible than this man sitting next to me due to my sexual orientation or my political beliefs. The truth is, my credibility comes today from my job experience with the IRS and my intimate knowledge of the agency's standard and procedures. I was raised and have always strived to do what is right. Although I do have my supporters, others have said that I am a traitor to the Democratic Party and that I am causing more division in our society. I implore you to consider that if you were in my position with the facts as I have stated them, ask yourself if you would be doing the exact same thing. I hope that I am an example to other LGBTQ people out there who are questioning doing the right thing at the potential cost of themselves and others. We should always do the right thing, no matter how painful the process might be. I kind of equate this to experience and feelings I encountered when coming out. It was honestly one of the hardest things I ever had to go through. I contemplated scenarios that would have been highly regrettable, but I did what is right, and I'm sitting here in front of you today. I would first like to take a minute to thank some people for their unfettered help and support. First off, God, for giving me the strength and courage to get through this process. My husband, who has been my rock, has put up with me, my stress, and has had to deal with his personal information being out there. My attorney, Dean Zerby, who has agreed to represent me through this matter pro bono, and someone who has provided me so much help and guidance. My colleagues from the Hunter Biden investigation. The work that was done on this case is tremendous, but seems to be overshadowed by what is happening here today. And I just want to say to the investigative team that I am thankful for having worked with you. I also want to thank my family and friends back home in Northeast Ohio and Georgia. I don't live in the DC area. I had to fly here and have had to pay out of pocket for all my travel-related expenses in being a whistleblower. On that note, I would like to make another statement that I have not accepted a single payment from anyone for being a whistleblower. First, Mr. Chairman, while I have my written statement as well as my testimony before the Ways and Means Committee, I would like to touch on briefly 7 specific matters. First, in a recent letter to Congress, Mr. Weiss stated that he had been granted ultimate authority over this matter, but then later stated in the same letter that his charging authority is geographically limited and that he would need a President Biden-appointed U.S. attorney to partner with him in charging the case. Mr. Weiss stated that he was making all decisions necessary to preserve the integrity of the prosecution consistent with federal law, the principles of federal prosecution, and departmental regulations. In the Criminal Tax Manual, Chapter 10, found on the DOJ website, Tax Division policy states that cases involving individuals who fail to file tax returns or pay a tax, but who also commit acts of evasion or obstruction should be charged as felonies to avoid inequitable treatment. In early August of 2022, federal prosecutors from the Department of Justice Tax Division drafted a 99-page memorandum. In so, they were recommending for approval felony and misdemeanor charges for the 2017, 18, and 19 tax years. That did not happen here, and I am not sure why. And as the special agent on this case, I thought the felony charges were well supported. When considering the elements of felony tax case, under the criminal code, there are 2 key considerations: willfulness and tax due and owing. In the criminal context, willfulness is defined as voluntary, intentional violation of a known legal duty. The tax loss is the monetary loss to the government. In early 2020, Hunter Biden's unfiled and delinquent tax returns were being prepared, which included his 2018 tax return. During the 2020 time period, by Hunter Biden's own account, he was sober, newly married, and writing his memoir. Hunter Biden's accountants requested that he sign a representation letter stating that all the deductions were for business purposes and were being reported appropriately. Statements Hunter Biden made in his book completely contradicted what he was deducting as business deductions on his 2018 return. While writing his memoir, Hunter stated, "I holed up inside the chateau for the first 6 weeks and learned how to cook crack." Hunter Biden allegedly falsely claimed business deductions for payments made to the Chateau Marmont, a hotel room for his supposed drug dealer, sex club memberships, falsely referenced on the wire as a golf membership, hotels he was blacklisted from, and a Columbia University tuition payment for his adult daughter. All of these items were used to support the willfulness element for felony tax evasion. These false deductions claimed by Hunter Biden caused a false return to be prepared that underreported his total income by approximately $267,000 and a loss to the U.S. Treasury of $106,000. Second, with respect to the 2014 tax year, Hunter Biden did not report any of the money he earned from Burisma for the 2014 tax year, which would have been a tax loss to the government of $124,000. According to my previous testimony, Hunter Biden did not report this income to the IRS or pay tax on the source of income. There is nothing that I see in the public documents as to the Department of Justice's action against Hunter Biden that indicate that Hunter Biden will be required to pay tax on this Burisma income from 2014 or amend his 2014 tax return. I would like to note that the plea agreement, when released, may provide a greater understanding. Third, I would like to make clear that the charging document for the District of Delaware, Hunter Biden was charged with failure to timely pay his taxes for 2017 and 18 in excess of $100,000 for each tax year. On Hunter Biden's 2017 and 18 tax returns, Hunter reported taxes owed of approximately $581,000 and $620,000 respectively. This tax amount in 2018 would not have included the alleged additional tax due and owing from the filed false return of $106,000. Thus, as I read the public documents as the Department of Justice action against Hunter Biden, there is nothing that indicates Hunter Biden will be required to amend his false tax return for 2018. A false tax return that includes improper deductions for prostitutes, sex clubs, and his adult children's tuition. Again, perhaps when the plea agreement is released, it may provide us with a greater understanding. Fourth, the decision to bring felony counts against Hunter Biden was agreed to by both prosecutors and investigators. In the fall of 2021, I met with prosecutors assigned to the case, and we all agreed and decided which charges we are going to recommend in the prosecution report, which included felony counts related to 2014 and 18. In March of 2022, the prosecutors requested discovery from the investigative team and presented the case to the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. In later meetings in early August of 2022, the assigned prosecutors, all four attorneys, agreed to recommend felony and misdemeanor charges for the 2017, 18, and 19 tax years, insofar as the Department of Justice Tax Division attorney sent an email about the process of bringing charges to include felony and misdemeanor tax charges in two separate districts, Delaware and Los Angeles. Less than a month later, Gary Shapley and I met with Mr. Weiss. He stated that he agreed with us regarding the 2014 and 2015 tax year misdemeanor and felony charges, but that this could somehow affect the later year misdemeanor and felony charges that he conveyed were stronger. Despite these facts, the plea deal that is being discussed occurred. To this day, I do not have a reason why that occurred. From my perspective, this might not have been problematic had the investigation been handled in the ordinary course. Fifth, as I had previously testified and is contained in my written testimony, I have outlined for you some instances in which assigned prosecutors did not appear to follow the normal investigative process, slow-walked the investigation, and put in place unnecessary approvals and roadblocks from effectively and efficiently investigating the case. A number of times we were not able to follow the facts. I am happy to respond to questions concerning these instances. Sixth, I will also note that while the impression has been conveyed by the U.S. Attorney in Delaware that he has similar powers to that of a special counsel in this case, free rein to do as needed, that was not the case. It appeared to me, based on what I experienced, that the U.S. Attorney in Delaware in our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials as well as other U.S. attorneys. I still think that a special counsel is necessary for this investigation to further handle ancillary investigations that are spun off and relate to Hunter Biden, but may not have venue in Delaware. Lastly, I would like to conclude again by encouraging Congress and the administration to consider establishing an official channel for federal investigators to pull the emergency cord and raise the issue of the appointment of a special counsel for consideration by senior officials. I do not want my colleagues at the IRS, FBI, and other federal law enforcement agencies to go through my frustrating journey and that of our team. I believe such a path will strengthen the public's confidence in their institutions and their fair and equal treatment of all Americans under the law. Thank you, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you very much. Chair now recognizes Mr. Shapley for his opening statement.
Thank you for inviting me to testify here today. I want to thank every member and staffer on both sides of the aisle who work for the work you do to represent your constituents and hold government accountable. My name is Gary Shapley. I worked as a special agent for IRS criminal investigation for 14 years. I have risen to become a senior leader in the organization and currently supervise 12 elite agents in the International Tax and Financial Crimes Group. I have worked directly with United States attorneys in multiple districts and have supervised or investigated cases in more than a dozen United States attorneys' offices across the country. I have led, planned, or executed undercover operations or search warrants in more than a dozen countries. I have investigated and managed some of the largest cases in the history of the agency, recovering more than $3.5 billion for the United States taxpayer. In this country, we believe in the rule of law, and that applies to everyone. There should not be a two-track justice system depending on who you are and who you're connected to. Yet, in this case, there was. Based on my experience, I'm here to tell you that the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office and Department of Justice handling the Hunter Biden tax investigation was very different from any other case in my 14 years at the IRS. At every stage, decisions were made that benefited the subject of this investigation. For example, prosecutors concealed contents of Hunter Biden's laptop from investigators. DOJ slow-walked serving document requests and executing search warrants. Warrants that were ready as early as April of 2020, but were delayed until after the November 2020 election and never pursued. Investigators were not allowed to follow up on WhatsApp messages from Hunter Biden's Apple iCloud backup, where he suggested he was sitting next to his father. Assistant United States Attorney Leslie Wolf cited the optics of executing a search warrant at President Biden's residence as a deciding factor for not allowing it, even though she agreed that probable cause existed. Prosecutors instructed investigators not to ask about the big guy or dad when conducting interviews. The Biden transition team was tipped off about interviews the night before the investigation went overt, a fact my FBI counterpart confirmed to this committee in a recent testimony, where the result was that only one witness spoke to investigators that day. These are just some of the examples of how our investigation was stymied. I'm not here to support partisan agendas on either side. I'm here because our tax system relies on the American people having confidence it is administered fairly and equally for everyone, regardless of your last name or political connections. If the handling of this case was inappropriate, it doesn't matter whether it happened under a Republican or Democrat administration. Whether you agree with my concerns about the unethical slow walking and preferential treatment in this case, you can be sure that my testimony is true and correct to the best of my ability. Unfortunately, the way this has already been handled by some members and the media has done immeasurable damage to future would-be whistleblowers. I have been attacked as incompetent and falsely accused of being a liar, a leaker, or both, all by people who know nothing about me or the facts of this case. Some question if I should even be called a whistleblower, suggesting that my disclosures are not legally protected merely because they don't like what I'm saying. We've seen this shoe on the other foot before, and some Republicans have made the same error, so there's plenty of blame for both sides. The cycle of villainizing or canonizing government employees who report what they believe is wrongdoing has to stop. When I first started noticing deviations from the normal investigative process around June 2020, I did not run to Congress to air grievances. Instead, I documented my concerns and made internal protected disclosures to my chain of command. I tried to give the prosecutors the benefit of the doubt for a very long time. After our investigation had largely concluded by the end of 2021, the IRS recommended charging Hunter Biden with multiple felonies and several misdemeanors for the tax years of 2014 through 2019. The Delaware Assistant United States Attorneys and Tax Division Trial Attorneys supported charging the felonies and misdemeanors listed in Exhibit 2 of my interview transcripts on page 44 and 45, which were officially referred to the Department of Justice Tax Division in February of 2022. This case was presented to the Washington, D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office in or around March 2022. In April 2022, in a hearing, Attorney General Garland was asked how the American people could be confident the administration was conducting a serious investigation into the president's own son. Attorney General Garland responded by saying, "Because we put the investigation in the hands of a Trump appointee." He led Congress to believe the case was insulated from improper political influence because all decisions were being made exclusively by Delaware United States Attorney David Weiss, but that was not true. The Justice Department allowed the president's political appointees to weigh in on whether to charge the president's son. After United States Attorney for D.C., Matthew Graves, appointed by President Biden, refused to bring charges in March 2022, I watched United States Attorney Weiss tell a room full of senior FBI and IRS senior leaders on October 7th, 2022, that he was not the deciding person on whether charges were filed. That was my red line. I had already seen a pattern of preferential treatment and obstruction. Now, United States Weiss was admitting that what the American people believed, based on the Attorney General's sworn statement, was false. I can no longer stay silent. In November of 2022, the statute of limitations was set to expire for the 2014 and 2015 charges in D.C., which included the 2014 felonies for the attempt to evade or defeat tax and fraud or false statement regarding bereavement income earned by Hunter Biden in those years. The statute of limitations had been extended through a tolling agreement with Hunter Biden's defense counsel, and they were willing to extend it past November 2022. Weiss allowed those to expire. Prosecutors presented the 2017, 2018, and 2019 criminal tax charges to the Central District of California around September of 2022, only after President Biden's nominee, Martin Estrada, was confirmed. In January of this year, I learned Estrada had declined to bring the charges. For all intents and purposes, the case was dead with the exception of one gun charge that could be brought in Delaware. And yet, when Senator Chuck Grassley asked Attorney General Garland about the case in March 2023, Garland testified, "The United States Attorney has been advised he has full authority to make those referrals you're talking about or to bring cases in other districts if he needs to do that. He has been advised that he should get anything he needs." After the October 7 Red Line meeting, there was no way to reconcile United States Attorney Weiss's statement, his office's actions with Attorney General Garland's public testimony. I am 100% certain of what Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office did in seeking approval from political appointees in D.C. and California. The New York Times reported that it has independently confirmed the charges being presented and declined in California. Plenty of other witnesses are familiar with these facts, in addition to those who witnessed U.S. Attorney Weiss's private admission. I encourage them to step forward and tell the truth about what happened and what they heard. Let me be clear, although these facts contradict Attorney General Garland's testimony and raise serious questions for you to investigate, I have never claimed to have evidence that Attorney General Garland knowingly lied to Congress. Whether Attorney General Garland knew his testimony was false is for you and the Inspector Generals to determine, not me. The same is true for United States Attorney Weiss's 3 letters to Congress since June 2023. It's for others to investigate and determine whether those letters contain knowingly false statements. However, it's clear that United States Attorney Weiss's story to the American public has evolved. He's gone from unequivocally echoing Attorney General Garland to, just 1 month later, corroborating the disclosures we made about limits on his authority. Weiss first said he can charge anywhere, and then admitted he's geographically limited. To go beyond those limits, Weiss later admitted he had to partner or get special authority. Garland said Weiss has authority. United States Attorney Weiss said he's been assured he would get authority. If he never requested or denied special authority from Attorney General Garland, as he told us on October 7, the American public deserves to hear why he allowed 2014 and 2015 D.C. charges to expire. No number of carefully worded denials or evolving half-truths can overshadow this stark fact. United States Attorney Weiss and Attorney General Garland will each be sitting before these committees one day. They will have to admit that despite all their obfuscation, the absolute fact is that this case was presented to 2 presidentially appointed U.S. attorneys in D.C. and California. That no charges were brought in those districts tells you everything that you need to know. I don't claim to be privy to United States Attorney Weiss or Attorney General Garland's communications, but United States Attorney Weiss told us that he was not the deciding person, that he had requested and was denied special authority after D.C. declined charges, and that if California declines, he will have to request special authorities again. I understood the gravity of those admissions. Whether full responsibility lies with United States Attorney Weiss or Attorney General Garland is for Congress, the Inspector Generals, and ultimately the public to decide. When I decided after October 7th to come forward and began researching whistleblower attorneys, I wanted to abide by the law in every way as I navigated the complex taxpayer privacy and grand jury secrecy statutes. I carefully followed the whistleblower process to the letter with the advice of counsel at every step. I am fortunate to be represented by Mark Lytle, a federal prosecutor for 25 years, including 5 years with the Department of Justice Tax Division. I'm also grateful for Empower Oversight, a nonprofit whistleblower group whose president, Tristan Levitt, was previously nominated by President Biden to the Merit Systems Protection Board and unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate. While some have tried to paint me with a partisan brush because this charitable organization employs some former staffers to GOP members on Capitol Hill, their expertise developed working for the patron saint and whistleblower, Senator Chuck Grassley, has been invaluable. Meanwhile, the Biden family attorneys appear to be representing Hunter Biden, President Biden, and the Department of Justice, and they are not working for free. It has been reported in public sources that there is a large fund paying for legal fees for Biden family attorneys. The source of those funds is unknown. They have virtually unlimited resources to pursue their agenda, while my motives are questioned simply for finding competent representation from a small nonprofit that helps whistleblowers. Groups such as Empower Oversight and Whistleblower Aid are the only path to ensure whistleblowers like me are heard and receive competent advice. My intention was not to be your sole source of information, and I implore you to take the necessary steps to obtain as much evidence as possible from as many sources as possible to be able to fully inform your conclusions. I'm confident that after you have done that, both sides will find serious issues with the Hunter Biden investigation that closely align with my testimony. No matter your party, I am not your opposition. I am here with information for you to examine, investigate, and determine whether more action is warranted on your part. I am on your team, whether we agree on every politically sensitive issue or not. There's no benefit for me blowing the whistle on this case, absolutely none. I have no book deal, and the only money that goes into my bank account every 2 weeks is from my employment for the federal government. I am still a supervisor leading a group of 12 fantastic agents working complex international investigations. Unfortunately, to this day, my immediate supervisors are retaliating against me for making protected disclosures.
Of course.
Even last fall, Biden family attorneys attacked investigators in the pages of the Washington Post and threatened the prosecutors with career suicide if they brought charges against the president's son.
Yep.
Then one of the Biden family attorneys sends to the press a 10-page error-filled letter. It attacked me with innuendo, false statements, and baseless speculation that I had leaked information to the Washington Post. These statements by Biden family attorneys are false. In conclusion, to the American people for whom this body works, I implore you to look at the facts, not agenda-laced statements from either side of the aisle. I am the average American citizen who worries about how I will send my kids to college and if I'll ever have enough money to retire, just like most people watching this today. I am the first person in my family to go to college. It was not an Ivy League school, and I don't have a network of rich and powerful friends to help me weather the storms of retaliation and character assassination. I am putting myself at risk for the American people who support me and for those who do not. At the end of the day, I'm just a small-town kid from Norwich, New York, who worked hard to get where I am and will never compromise my integrity. I will never forget who I am, where I come from, or all the people in my life who have made me who I am today. Thank you all for your time.
That sounds like a suspendable.
Thank you both for those excellent opening statements. We'll now begin the questioning phase, and I'll begin questioning. We'll start with Mr. Ziegler. Here on the committee, we focused on following the evidence, specifically the money trail through bank records and suspicious activity reports. And I want to discuss with you specific payments made to Hunter Biden and the Biden family. Democrats and the left-wing media are also saying there's no evidence. But let's get into the evidence, Mr. Ziegler. I want to direct you to pages 99 and 100 of your transcript. How much money did Hunter Biden and his associates
This guy
receive?
Ziegler paid his own way,
You
just like
identified?
Garrett and I.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So that amount would be from Romania. So the approximate total transfers from the Romania company would have been 3.1 million to everyone.
3.1 million. How much did Hunter Biden and his business associates receive from State Energy HK Limited through the Robinson Walker LLC?
So total transfers from State Energy HK to Rob Walker was 3 million.
3 million. Was there a $100,000 payment from CEFC Infrastructure to Owasco PC, Hunter Biden's professional corporation?
Yes, Chairman.
Approximately how much was transferred to Hunter Biden and his business associates through Hudson West 3?
So the total transfers from Hudson West 3 to everyone was 3.7 million.
3.7 million. How much money did Hunter Biden and his business associates receive from the Ukrainian company Burisma?
Burisma paid to everyone involved $6.5 million.
$6.5 million. Burisma also paid Blue Star Strategies and a law firm hundreds of thousands of dollars, bringing the total Burisma payments to over $7 million. Is that correct?
That is correct, $7.3 million.
$7.3 million. Between 2014 and 2019, this brings the total amount of foreign income streams received to approximately $17 million, correct?
That is correct.
What was the purpose of analyzing money from foreign sources, and do you have documents to support your findings?
So for the purpose of documenting the foreign sources is as a part of a normal international tax investigation, we have to figure out where the money's coming from. You have to follow the money trail. And as a part of that process, we have to follow different transactions, identify different foreign entities that might be paying a person, and then we go and get those records.
Right. And hopefully you can provide that to the committee.
So yeah, any records regarding those transactions, we
love evidence on this side of the aisle. On page 80 of your transcript, you identified other Biden family members who received relevant payments to your investigation, such as the grandchildren. Can you explain why you wanted to interview them?
So as a part of the investigation, you want to interview people who might have received money, people who might have had deductions that were deducted on the tax return. So there's a multitude of reasons why you would want to talk to family members.
Is it common for grandchildren to receive money from foreign nationals and significant business wires?
So I don't know the reason, or I don't know what's behind any of these payments that might have been made to specific family members, but I can just speak to what was paid, what was in our transcript.
Thank you. I would invite the media here today to review the committee's bank records memorandum, which closely matches the IRS figures. We will have a supplemental memorandum discussing payments from the Ukraine, Russia, and other sources very soon based on bank records we've recently received but haven't disclosed yet. Sir, you've confirmed for me what I've been saying all along. The committee has accomplished in 5 months what it took the Department of Justice 5 years to figure out. Mr. Shapley, I want to turn to President Biden. You've stated to CBS Evening News that there were certain investigative steps you were not allowed to take that could have led to President Biden. Can you tell us what investigative steps related to President Biden that you wanted to take but you couldn't?
So there were multiple instances in this investigation where there were references to the father of the subject, President Biden. And in the course of any normal investigation, when the subject's father is somehow related to the finances of the subject, that in the normal course of any investigation, we would have to go and get that information to properly vet the financial flows of money in that investigation to determine what we end up charging.
Mm-hmm. There was a tweet or a message in the laptop from Hunter Biden to Kevin Dong, who was with CEFC. And it said, quote, "The Bidens are the best I know at doing exactly what the chairman wants from this partnership." Now, the chairman he's referring to is Chairman Yee of CEFC. Is that correct?
In that stream,
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
So can you tell me what the Bidens are best at? Do you understand what he would have meant by that? I mean, this is a Chinese company, and I think the ranking member referred to it with Gal Luft. It's the same entity that paid Gal Luft the money that he got indicted for being an unregistered foreign agent, I believe was the charge. But this is another solicitation from Hunter Biden, and he refers to the Bidens, plural, and they're best at doing what the chairman wants. I think that's very concerning to our committee because this is a Chinese Communist Party-owned entity. This is of concern to our national security, and I didn't know, in closing, if you had any information with respect to that comment there.
With respect to the WhatsApp messages, it was something we clearly needed to follow up on, and that was really one of the major deviations from in this case is that investigators asked and Special Agent Ziegler asked to follow to take some investigative steps to review that, and it just simply wasn't supported by the prosecutors. So further delving into what that means, I just simply can't do.
Well, I can promise you, we're not going to stop on this committee until we understand what he fully meant by that message to a Chinese Communist Party official.
Mr. Chairman, can I say
Seems
something
relevant.
about
Yes,
that?
please.
So, thank you for that question. There was a long WhatsApp message contained in that was only a
Right.
portion of it. So what we can do, or what we can go back, is we can turn that over to the House Ways and Means Committee. They can vote to release it, and then that information can be available for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now yield to Ranking Member Askins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank both the witnesses for their testimony and for appearing with us today. It seems to me that a lot of your testimony has been about the problem of prosecutorial discretion and the traditional tug of war between investigators who characteristically want to charge as many offenses as they've come across,
$17 million.
and prosecutors who are more attuned to the rigors of the courtroom and the complexity of forensic evidence. And I admit, as a former state assistant attorney general, I see it more from the prosecutor's standpoint than the investigator's standpoint. But Mr. Shapley, would you concede that there are lots of crimes that are identified by investigators that are not actually charged by prosecutors routinely? I'll give you an example. In the recent prosecution, the recent indictment of Donald Trump for retaining government documents that he unlawfully took, according to
What
the
a better example than a Trump example.
he was charged only with
Drinks.
possessing those documents that were recovered after the August 2022 search warrant, but he had hundreds of documents that were recovered before
So we're
that,
gonna have these guys
15
comment on
boxes
things
that were
that they,
recovered
are
in
not related to
January and
and
then
crimes
after
that
the
they don't
grand jury
investigate?
subpoena
Got
in
it.
June. But the prosecutors decided not to charge any of those as
Well,
offenses.
that's why he talked so
They
long
said
in his
they were
opening
gonna
statement.
take
They're
more
just trying to run up the
egregious
clock. They got 3 hours till 5 p.m. and then it's quitting
Is
time.
that unfamiliar to you, that kind of decision by a prosecutor?
So I can't speak to anything related to the Trump investigation, but the issue here with this case is that it wasn't just investigators that agreed with these charges. In Exhibit 2 in my testimony, it clearly shows a prosecution recommendation report where it says right in the document that the Assistant United States Attorneys and Department of Justice Tax Division agreed with those recommended charges. And then again, and as Special Agent Ziegler alluded to in late 2022.
And they were recommended to whom?
To Department of Justice. So the prosecution recommendation report is referred to the Department of Justice Tax Division for approval, discretion, or declination.
Right, but then it all went to the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, right?
So that's not entirely accurate because, Department of Justice Tax Division up through March 16th of 2023 had not yet approved, provided discretion, or declined charges. So U.S. Attorney Weiss had no authority to charge any of those charges without the Department of Justice Tax Division's approval beforehand.
And I'd like to say something about this real quick. So
Well, let me come back to you because I only have a limited amount of time and I've got questions for you. But in fact, Mr. Ziegler, you say that
He actually doesn't have any
Hunter
questions. He
Biden's
just needs to
unpaid
run this
taxes
out.
were around
It's called
$2
the
million,
filibuster.
and he's now paid those
Total
back.
filibuster. And Ziegler's actually got some stones on him. He keeps jumping in. I like that. I wish I'd done that.
Taxes. Will you just
Great.
explain how
We just explain why
people
Jamie
can be
Raskin has a
charged
job.
for not paying taxes even after they've made
He
amends?
used to be a state assistant prosecutor.
Under the
He's coming from a position of authority on this,
if
Kyle.
someone fails to timely
You know,
pay
the,
their taxes, usually due April 15th, once that date occurs, they have a known tax liability and they fail to pay it, the crime has already been committed. The fact that they paid the taxes after, that's a mitigating factor that the judge can use their discretion at sentencing. But I would like to make one reference that this does not include the over $100,000 in additional tax due and owing that was not charged related.
No, you made yourself clear. You thought there were additional charges that were laid on the table and not pursued by U.S. Attorney
So
Weiss.
Raskin is arguing from his position of
Mr.
authority, but I don't
Shapley,
accept the
You
authority. That's all.
testified that the critical moment
He
in your
talked right over him. That was great.
to blow the whistle in the Hunter Biden investigation
Yeah,
was
he's
the
killing it.
October 7th
They're
meeting,
afraid to mess with him because he's a gay
2022,
Democrat.
that you have.
Yeah, I mean, look, it just
And up
is
until
what
that
it is.
point, you say you
Trump
were
card.
willing to chalk up the differences with prosecutors to the typical, quote, investigator versus prosecutor type thing, which is what I think this is all about. But you say on page 28 of your transcript, if I wasn't in the October 7th meeting, my red line might not have been crossed. And I think you reaffirmed that today. Now, as I understand it, what crossed your red line is that in that meeting, you understood Mr. Weiss to be saying that he did not have the authority to bring charges in DC or California without the approval of the U.S. attorneys for those districts. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. But in a letter that he sent to Chairman Jordan in June, U.S. Attorney Weiss stated, and I quote, "I have been granted ultimate authority over this matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges." He went on to explain that in considering charges in districts outside Delaware, usual DOJ practice would be, quote, to contact the U.S. Attorney's office for the district in question and determine whether it wants
Wait, do we
to
have like
partner
the
on
like
case.
the fight
that
girls that
office
come in, the
declined
round
to
girls
the
that come
request
in?
of granted
I
authority
love he's
to
quoting the letter that then was contradicted 23 days later.
Yeah.
Attorney
So there you go.
status
There's the
from
evidence
Attorney
of contradicted
General
statements.
pursuant to
Perfect.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter to them.
515.
Doesn't matter.
No.
To try to
no.
clear this up, Mr. Shapley, let's go back to March 2022.
We're going to try to clear this up by
when, as you
not
explained
clearing
on
this
page
up.
153 of the
Try to
transcript,
obfuscate.
the U.S. Attorney for D.C. declined to partner with Mr. Weiss to bring the 2014 and 2015 charges in D.C. After that decision,
They
by
don't
the
even
US
have a stand to put it on this. They're making a guy hold it.
charges with all of you. In fact, Mr. Ziegler on
Sounds
page
like
39
intern
of your
hazing.
transcript, you
I want to
described
know how
in
much tax dollars have been
2022,
spent on
you had
these giant billboards that they always bring up here.
concerns
They
about
got to
those
be
charges,
running
including
a
that in
running tab
2015,
at
Hunter
like a
Biden
FedEx
was
print
in the
store
throes
for
of his
thousands
drug
of dollars.
addiction after the death of his brother. And in that meeting, Mr. Weiss tells you, and I quote, "I'm still weighing it." Now, Mr. Ziegler, in September 2022, Mr. Weiss was telling you that he was the one weighing whether to bring the 2014 and 2015 charges. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Now, coming back to the October 7th, 2022 meeting, Mr. Shapley, according to you on page 155, Mr. Weiss said that, quote, he decided not to charge 2014 and 2015. It seems to me this October 7th, 2022 meeting, which you've described as a red line, is just a misunderstanding. That after the U.S. Attorney in D.C. declined to partner on the 14 and 15 charges,
Yeah,
Mr.
so,
Weiss took a
look,
good hard
I know
look
you've
at
been a
those
whistleblower
charges
and you basically had to
himself,
come out publicly,
and
even though you
ultimately
wanted to be
decided
quiet. But
not to
it's just a
charge them,
misunderstanding on
and
your
therefore
part.
not to
It's your
seek
failure there,
the
Gary.
special
My
attorney
bad.
status. He may have been right
It's
about that.
always the whistleblower who's
Wrong
at fault.
Make your
Yep.
case for, but it was his decision. Isn't that right, Mr. Shapley?
No, that's not supported by the facts.
Really? Well, which
Nice.
not supported by?
His own admissions
That's
in the
great.
October 7th, 2022 meeting that I documented contemporaneously. And if the only piece of
But he contradicts what you're saying. Do you agree that? He doesn't agree with what you're saying about
has
that
not-
meeting. Now, I wasn't at that October 7th.
No, I contradict what he's
but
saying.
what was
That's
said
the
at the meeting
reply.
over 2.5 years ago may be a
I
little
like
ambiguous.
Raskin.
or
Look, I
unclear
wasn't
today.
there. I don't know what I'm talking
Mr.
about. But
Weiss's
let me tell
letter
you what I
to
think.
Chairman Jordan could not
Look,
be
at one point he said A, and another point he said B,
over this
but
matter,
I
including
think A makes my case, so I'm going to say that that's what he said.
Correct.
when and whether to file the charges. So if there's any
The
ambiguity,
bandito in the background is just
Attorney
messing
White,
with me.
Donald Trump's handpicked
I can't tell if that's a
US
female or a
attorney
male.
for Delaware. I yield back.
Whoa. It's
Gentlemen,
not a
yield back.
binary.
I recognize.
Neither can they.
Can I
They don't know what they are either.
To bring up. So there are a lot of different tax cases out there that include misdemeanors and felonies. And
I
there's a
love
lot
this
of
guy.
reasons why we charge the felony.
I'm willing to overlook the Pride Progress
But I want to be clear on
He's
this.
kind of a
When
badass.
you have a felony charge with a misdemeanor, that you have to charge the felony. And in this case, they did not charge that felony. And then there's one more point to this. We had a meeting with all four
Excuse me,
assigned
when you
prosecutors.
say you have to charge the felony, that is a Department of Justice rule, you're saying?
That is in their manual that you have to charge the felony in order to avoid inequitable treatment of taxpayers.
No, but you're saying whether or not the evidence.
I mean,
fits it?
that's just
That is a
a
part of
reasonable
that.
stance to have.
Level of the evidence, but that goes back to the point of that if the certain deductions that were taken on the tax return, that's for you guys to decide whether the felony was there or not. But the point is that we're bringing.
That's for the
forward
U.S.
evidence.
attorney to decide. And I'm afraid we're not going to be
Gentlemen,
able to
gentlemen,
investigate
all
every
right.
tax case
All
in
right,
America.
Gentleman's time's expired. Now, Chair now recognizes Mr. Smith from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr.
You should have let
Shapley.
Ziegler respond to that a little bit more instead of just passing
We
the
can't charge
baton.
every tax crime in America,
And tell the truth for the American public.
but we're going to hire
And
87,000
I
more agents.
apologize
Yeah.
of the behavior of some of our colleagues and how the press has treated you for doing what is right so the American people can see it. Mr. Shapley, included in the documents you provided to the Ways and Means Committee is a document labeled Exhibit 2 in the transcript of your testimony, which is a portion of a special agent report. This document is located following page 41 of the transcript, this one. What is this document and what recommendations are made in this document?
Yes, so this is the prosecution recommendation report that IRS CI agents produce at the end of an investigation when they're going to recommend prosecution to the Department of Justice. This was authored by Special Agent Ziegler, and it's an incredibly robust document. There's several thousand pages because each of these the facts and the elements in this particular report, the elements of each violation show which piece of evidence meets that element. So in this report, it recommended felony charges for 2014, 2018, and 2019, and misdemeanor charges for 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And it further shows that Special Agent Ziegler spoke with prosecutors and worked hand in hand with prosecutors while this was being drafted, and they clearly agreed that the elements of these violations were met, and they supported this document. And when it was sent to Department of Justice Tax Division for approval on February 25th, 2022.
Mr. Shapley, what level of confidence does the IRS need to have to recommend charges like the felony counts listed in this document?
So, I mean, each violation has each element listed in this report, and the evidence is shown underneath each of it. This report goes through internal departments at IRS criminal investigation, and in addition to the prosecutors agreeing that the evidence supported charging felony counts, the senior leadership up to the Director of Field Operations, the IRS criminal investigation, also personally reviewed this report and approved it to be sent to Department of Justice Tax Division.
So were you surprised that on June 20th, 2023, prosecutors announced a plea agreement with Hunter Biden under which he would only plead guilty to violations of 2 misdemeanor charges?
So the guilty plea is outside of my control. But what I can say is it's not what an investigator thought. It's not what Special Agent Ziegler or I thought, that felony charges were proven in this case. The prosecutors again and again agreed with that assessment. And Attorney General, United States Attorney Weiss also agreed with these because he went to the DC U.S. Attorney to ask him to partner. You don't ask someone to partner with you if you don't yourself agree with those charges. And when he got denied that, he requested special authority and was declined, as he said in the October 7th, 2022 meeting.
Yeah, in the report that we just highlighted as Exhibit 2, it states in there that even Leslie Wolf agreed with these charges moving forward, the assistant prosecutor. Mr. Ziegler, on page 32 of the transcript of your testimony, you discussed the need to interview Hunter Biden's adult children regarding certain deductions that you listed earlier of Hunter Biden included on his tax returns. You also testified that Assistant United States Attorney Leslie Wolf told you that you would get into hot water if interviewed the president's grandchildren. In other cases that you've worked over your career, have you ever had a prosecutor tell you that you couldn't interview a relevant witness?
So there are certain things that come into whether we talk to a witness or not. So if they're an attorney, if there's some special situation that might come up, that might cause caution to interviewing that witness. But I've never been told that we couldn't approach someone to interview them as a part of an investigation. Yeah, I mean, there's certain
because that's corruption. That's why he's never been told that,
further
because it's
analysis
corrupt
of
to do so.
information that you might get if they're, like I said, if they're an attorney. But yeah, so in this case,
A good prosecutor
needed,
would go interview somebody that they want to talk
talk
to.
to witnesses related to things that were deducted on the tax return.
I can't imagine ever being told as a cop or an FBI agent that I would get in hot water for going to interview someone. It's so beyond the pale and so clear that it's corrupt.
I recognize Mr. Kritzmorte from Illinois for 5 minutes.
It happened during the Boston Marathon bombing
Shapley, thank you, Mr.
investigation.
Ziegler,
This
for
is
your
not
service
unusual
to the
for
country. Really
DOJ.
appreciate you coming here and appearing in this capacity. First of all, Mr. Ziegler, I see at page 12 of your transcript, deposition transcript, you start laying out a series of concerns
Kyle, I need you to pronounce that last name.
with regard to various people and different issues related to this investigation.
No.
You say, quote, I started this investigation in November 2018 after reviewing. Then you later
Is that
say
an I at
career
the end?
staff were not initially
No one's
supportive.
ever heard of this person ever, and even the people who voted for him.
November 2018, Joe Biden was not.
Clearly not Irish.
Joe Biden was not the president.
And then at page 20, you lay out another concern. You had a concern about Bill Barr, Attorney General Bill Barr, consolidating these series of cases into the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware. At that point, you said, quote, what was the potential issue I saw with working the case in Delaware? We were working with a small U.S. Attorney's Office who might not have ever worked a case of this caliber. Now, of course, Bill Barr was appointed by Donald Trump, correct?
Drink.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, let me turn to another concern that you lay out in your testimony. You were concerned about the quality
I've already taken
of
this
the
guy down in volume,
prosecutors.
but
On
yeah, if you're not
page
drinking on Donald Trump,
14,
you owe us a drink.
you say, quote, the prosecutors were the JV squad, and they weren't up to the task of handling such a big
This
case.
guy has experience and knows a
US
thing or
Attorney
two
Weiss
and is critical of the way this
appointed by
investigation is
Donald
being
Trump,
handled,
right?
and that makes him unqualified to come forward with
As far as
additional concerns.
actual nomination and what went into why.
I'm not asking you why. I'm just saying.
I'm saying that I
USA Weiss
stole
was
my
attorney
tie. It used to
appointed
be
by
a
Donald
couch,
Trump, correct?
and
That
I
is
turned
correct.
that couch into
Okay.
a tie.
Now, another
Skinned
concern you lay out in your deposition at page 21.
Strong comb over too.
About your concerns about this investigation having been made overt, being publicized for the world to know. You said, quote, one of the first disagreements I recall between the IRS investigators and prosecutors was the idea of going public. Now, sir, this was in March, April 2019. Joe Biden was not the president then, was he?
So I don't recall the exact date of when he announced that he was going to run for presidency, but I know that
That's not my question, sir. Joe Biden was not the president
So what?
in March, April.
So his son could not have committed a tax crime if he was not the
Now,
president.
Mr. Shapley, let me turn to you for a second here.
It's on the disappearing
You
ink side of
also
the
raised
Declaration of
three
Independence.
Concerns in your deposition transcript. One is this. You said you were concerned about the complexities of the election cycle and potential delays that arose in connection with the election cycle. You said at page 23, and I remember there were always times where we were always on an impending election cycle. It was always the elections being brought up in early 2020. It was the presidential primaries. Now, sir, Joe Biden was not the president at that time either, was he?
Irrelevant. Dude's been in politics for 40 years.
Question is, no, he was not, but I don't see where you referenced it in my, for me to
Page
follow along.
23.
The Democrats
You're
are trying to
talking
frame
about
this
how the
entire
election
thing
cycle is
as a
delaying
hit on
decision
Joe Biden. And the
prosecution.
tax issues are all about Hunter.
That the delay
Right. These are
Therefore, your
IRS
attack
people.
on Joe Biden fails. I
when
mean,
Joe
this-
Biden was not.
And it's from monies that he got going back to 2014. Who was the vice president then? Can't remember.
So, Mr. Ziegler and you shared concerns about delays.
Oh, they have the wrong
related to
transcript. That's even
election
better.
cycle. But at that time, Joe Biden was not the president.
I believe at that time he was the nominee for president.
it's a Marcus Allen moment.
Yes, exactly. I was like, did he put something on Twitter?
Oh
It's
God,
just
I
a
hope we
simple
do a
question,
Twitter.
Can you rephrase what time period?
Joe Biden was not the president in the presidential
Joe Biden was not the
primaries
president. Yeah, we
in
got you.
2020.
Correct. That is correct.
Sir, finally, Mr. Shapley,
Oh man, look at him. He scored.
you said that
He
warrants
scored.
I don't
We're
get why
ready
he's so
as soon as
stuck on that
2020.
point.
Not
No
them
kidding,
states.
he wasn't the president. Nobody cares because
President
Um,
when he was president,
with
guys.
regard to
That
those
is
warrants.
a strong
Again,
takeaway. Democrats.
Joe
I think
Biden was
there-
not.
he's intimating that the investigation couldn't have been stymied by Biden because he wasn't the president at that
Right.
time.
We're talking about an
But
election
they're saying that this
Hold on, let Gary talk.
President
Let's see.
Biden was a part of. So you didn't have to be the president to have election meddling.
No, but the question
right.
is this:
Here you go.
was he the president at that time in April 2020?
Irrelevant.
It's been asked and answered.
And what's the answer, sir?
The election.
The answer is
issue
yes or no.
is no. That.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish?
Please, you may answer the question.
So
Good.
clear that he was not the president, but an election is for the purpose of electing a president. And Joe Biden at the time was a nominee for president of the United States. Therefore, the election clauses with DOJ policy took place and were in effect. And it wasn't until September 4th of 2020 that the Department of Justice Public Integrity said that we can no longer take any actions on that case. And as early as April to June of 2020, the Department of Justice, Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office was already invoking the election as a reason not to perform those search warrants.
Okay.
That was Donald
And
Trump.
gentlemen's time's expired. We've got
that
a
was
lot of
Trump.
questions
He's at a
here.
Trump
Chair now
break.
recognizes Mr. Jordan of Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, David Weiss sent me 2 letters. In the first letter on June 7th, he said, I have been granted ultimate authority over the matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges. The quote that the ranking member just put up. Later that same month, he sent me the second letter where he said, no, I don't. No, I don't have that charging authority. So June 7th, he says, I'm the boss. I can do whatever I darn well want, file it wherever I want. And then June 30th, he says, no, I can't. What happened in between those 2 events? Your testimony went public.
Oops.
He goes, oh my goodness, I got to change my story because now the truth's coming out.
Oops.
And it sounds like in this investigation to me, Mr. Shapley, that the prosecutors and the investigators were in agreement for most of the investigation. And then we get to October of 2022. I see Mr. Ziegler nodding his head. And that meeting is where David Weiss told you something. Is that right, Mr. Shapley? What did he say? Can you put your mic on there? What did he say?
Yes, he told me he was not the deciding person on whether or not charges were filed. He told us that D.C. U.S. Attorney had declined to allow charges. He told us that he had requested special counsel authority from Maine DOJ and denied that
And
authority.
was denied.
That's correct.
Were you the only guy in that meeting?
I was not.
How many other people were there?
There were 7 total people, including me.
You and Mr. Weiss and 5 others, right?
That's correct.
And have any of them come forward and say what you just said is not true?
They have not.
No one has, right?
That is
No
correct.
one has disputed, refuted. No one said what you said is not true.
That's
And did you
correct.
memorialize what took place in that meeting? Did you memorialize that?
Yes, I did. That day when I returned home from the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office, I put it in an email to the 2 senior executives at my agency.
You put it in an email that day.
That's correct.
Contemporaneous when it happened. I got the email here. It's Exhibit 10 in your testimony when you were interviewed by the Ways and Means Committee, October 7th, Friday evening, 6:09 p.m. That email, right?
That's correct.
Sent to Mr. Walden and Mr. Batdorf. Who are those individuals?
Mike Batdorf is the Director of Field Operations for Southern Division of IRCI, and Darrell Walden was the Special Agent in charge of the Washington, D.C. Field Office.
These are your bosses, right?
That's correct.
Did Mr. Walden get back to you?
Yes, he did.
Remember what he said?
He said, "Thanks, Gary, you covered it all."
You covered it all. He didn't say, thanks, Gary, but you're wrong. That's not what happened. He affirmed what you said. You covered it all, and you laid it out. You spelled out just what you told me a few minutes ago, right?
That's correct.
What Mr. Weiss told you in that meeting.
Yes.
And when that goes public on June 22nd, last month, Mr. Weiss says, oh, I got to change my story. I better send a letter to the Judiciary Committee where he says, I stand by what I wrote, but I wish to expand. I wish to fix it. And then he had to further go,
Look at the lady in the red jacket
further
back there.
in July
She looks
when
confused.
when he sent a letter to Senator Graham.
That's Caroline, isn't it?
Apply again.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's Caroline Navley.
You guys haven't.
No, that's not her.
It happened.
No?
Nope, she's got it around her face.
It's consistent with the investigators
she
up
stopped
until this
drinking.
October 7th meeting, and then he changed. What do you think happened, Mr. Shapley?
I don't know what happened internal at Department of Justice, but what I can say is that the story has been changing from Department of Justice and U.S. Attorney Weiss, and I think the only person that's really had any documents that have been corroborated are my own.
Exactly. I think what happened. I think it's obvious. Anyone with common sense can see what happened because he said it in Mr. Graham's letter. He said, I had discussions with Maine Justice. I had discussions with
I
the
like that
folks,
he doesn't like to speculate.
the deputy
It's good.
attorney general, the attorney,
Gary's doing a
whoever
good
it
job.
was, I don't know, but he had discussions with the people at Maine Justice, and suddenly
And Ziegler's
things changed.
just a fire thrower.
And that all became evident on October 7th. And until October 7th, the investigators, to Mr. Raskin's point, the investigators and the prosecutors, they were in agreement. Here are the facts. Here's how we do it. Here's how we've always done it. We got the two best agents in the place on the case. Let's go. And then shazam, something changes. And I think it's what Mr. Weiss conveyed to Senator Graham when he said, I had discussions with folks at Maine Justice. We don't know what were in those discussions, but it looks pretty obvious what happened. Looks pretty obvious. Initially, everyone was pounding their chest. David Weiss has complete authority. Now, suddenly, he doesn't. He doesn't, because you guys came forward and told the truth. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
This should be very enlightening, I'm sure. Get ready to drink.
So are we under the impression that Weiss wanted to bring charges and had his hands tied by DOJ?
With our work.
It's hard to say.
No, they're just playing a game.
Yeah, Weiss was also in the Obama administration.
Yeah, and he's not a Trump appointee officially. Coombs and Carper, the senators from Delaware, recommended him, and then Trump just signed off on it. That's all.
What political interference?
Can we agree that Lynch needs to get some sun like Gary? Gary Shapley seems like he's been doing some days on the beach, but not so much over here from Massachusetts.
In 2000,
This is my guy, though. This is my favorite guy. He's the one who couldn't understand that there was no replacement for the child porn.
Michael Flynn was indicted. Indicted by the federal jury.
Here we go. Let's bring him back
federal
up.
Grand jury. He pled guilty twice. And
yeah, because they threatened to throw his son
he
in
lied
prison
to
too.
the CIA about his
Correct.
communications with the Russian government prior to the
After trolling
inauguration
him in
of
an
President
entrapment,
Trump. He was only
false
national
statements trap.
security advisor for 22
How
days.
is Flynn relevant to
My
Hunter Biden?
colleagues on the other side of the aisle had
Because he worked for Orange Man.
zero interest in looking into that case. And in response, the president at the time, President Trump, repeatedly and publicly attacked the case and the agents who brought it, including by claiming that Mr. Flynn was the victim of a quote, dirty, filthy cops at the top of the FBI, close quote.
They
He also described the prosecution as a disgrace and claimed that those who investigated Mr. Flynn were guilty of treason. Those are public statements made by a sitting president attacking the FBI. And despite the fact that Mr. Flynn pleaded guilty twice to lying to the FBI, President Trump's Attorney General William Barr personally intervened in the case, and that led the Department of Justice to abruptly reverse course and have the case dismissed on grounds that a federal judge found dubious, to say the least. And that's a quote from the judge. In the case of longtime Trump associate and advisor Roger Stone, a federal jury found him guilty in 2019 of obstructing a congressional investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election by lying to Congress and witness tampering. In response, a sitting president, President Trump, immediately took to Twitter, attacking the Department of Justice and accusing them of employing a, quote, double standard and committing a, quote, miscarriage of justice. President Trump also publicly attacked the department's sentencing recommendation for Mr. Stone, leading senior officials to overrule the federal prosecutors who had investigated and brought the case.
Hey, regarding Mike Flynn, is the FBI counterintelligence director a high-ranking
my
position?
Republican colleagues at the time.
Because that's the guy who said, is our goal to get him to lie and prosecute him?
To resign or withdraw from the case. President Trump even congratulated former Attorney General Barr for interfering. That's what political intervention looks like. And we know it on this committee. And in the case of
it's all
former
about Trump. That's what it is.
Chairman,
What were you saying,
Paul
Steve? Were you
Manafort,
saying what is he, an assistant
who worked
director?
to elect
No, he was the FBI counterintelligence director. It's Bill Priestip.
Yeah.
president.
What's our goal? To get him to lie so we can
Who was
prosecute him
convicted in
or get him fired.
2018 of bank and tax fraud, ultimately
Wrote it down.
guilty to conspiracy against the United States.
Oh, here we
and
go.
Conspiracy to obstruct justice. President Trump deemed it, quote,
All right, I'm
a
hiding for a
very
second.
sad day for our country. And in terms of sweetheart deals, in December of 2020, at the end of his term, President Trump granted full pardons to his close allies, his pals, Flynn, Stone, and Manafort, allowing them to escape accountability for their numerous crimes. Now that is
Flynn, they
it.
wanted to drop charges on, and the judge wouldn't let him.
They got away with everything. Not like Hunter Biden, who's pleading guilty, suffers the reputational damage and
Yeah, I think that
embarrassment of his
judge's
family,
name was Robinson, his last name.
the widely publicized facts of his drug addiction. And this was a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney that prosecuted this for 4 years. And President Biden did not seek to remove him, which normally happens when a new president comes into office. He has the full right to remove him. Never did so. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Timmons from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to help simplify this for the American people. We are here today because
George is
our
hydrating too.
institutions
It's good.
are
You need
broken.
to hydrate.
The DOJ, the FBI, the IRS have transformed from a balanced apparatus.
Are we going to
of
talk to the
justice
whistleblowers?
into
Are we going to do the
political
same thing
weapon
where we just
of the left?
give speeches
A
about
process that I
stupidity
believe
and
began during the
things that are
Obama
false?
administration.
Very familiar.
Actively
That's all they're
pursued
doing. They're looking
based
at that
on
clock,
ideas
man. There's not that many actually of them in there.
targeting Donald Trump,
No.
who posed a significant threat to the political left.
Jenny wants to know
Upon his election,
if Lynch
the
was drinking.
bureaucratic
Certainly
resistance
possible,
didn't
but a
stop.
lot of people from
Their
Massachusetts
hatred
just sound
for
like
Trump
that.
permeated
I think
throughout
Lynch
their work,
drinks blood.
attempting to cripple his administration
Oh,
almost
turn
every
George up.
turn. And for the last 30 months, the
There you go,
DOJ, the
George.
FBI, and
What
the
are you
IRS
drinking? Whiskey?
I
have
think
worked
Lynch drinks
not only to
blood.
protect the criminal
Okay.
actions of the Biden family,
He
but to
doesn't look
continue
like he goes out in the daylight.
That's true.
Some describe this as a two-tier system of justice, but what it really is, it's a system deliberately and systematically prosecuting individuals within the Trump orbit due to their hatred for President Trump. Simultaneously, crimes of the current president and members of his family,
Oh, we just
all
had a
while
speed
issuing
skip.
selectively timed and perfectly planned indictments against President Trump. Today, we are joined by two whistleblowers from the IRS. There are also whistleblowers from within the FBI and the DOJ. All these people are stepping forward now because after the 2022 election, the American people have entrusted the House majority to Republicans, granting us subpoena power. With gavels in hand, we now possess crucial evidence just months into our investigations. The American people can see plain as day the corruption, bribery, and criminal actions of the Biden family. We are here to do the jobs that the DOJ, the FBI, and the IRS refuse to do. They have failed to fulfill their duties and properly investigate the Biden family and their international bribery schemes.
Yeah, not
which
for lack of
resulted
the
in
frontline
million-dollar
agents trying to do the
payouts.
job.
I want to again thank you both for coming forward. I cannot imagine how difficult this has been on you and your family. I think the best use of my time is to help simplify the complex scheme for the American people. Help do the job that DOJ, IRS, and FBI, they just refuse to do. We talk about China, we talk about Romania, Ukraine, it all seems complicated. But this scheme was born in 2014 in Ukraine and then replicated in other countries. Ukraine is the proof of concept, if you will. This is the scheme, simple. Foreign client has a problem, pays a Biden. Vice President Biden travels to the country. Vice President Biden leverages U.S. influence to force a favorable outcome for the client. The Biden family earns their fee.
Kaboom.
That's the scheme. That's the scheme. So let's just start with Ukraine so I can just show you the proof of concept.
Or we
I'm
could
gonna
all
walk you
agree
through
that
it.
$17 million
2014, Burisma has a
worth of
problem.
payments were because
They
of their
wanted to
high
stop
skill
this
at some
on
sort
Wall
of
Street.
business that we can't
But
identify.
the prosecutor general is investigating
Hunter
corruption.
Biden is a
Let's
very
show some
good
EIN
artist.
numbers for the
They want
employees and show some
What do
P&L
they do?
statements for
They
those
hire Hunter
companies.
Biden, pay him millions of
No.
dollars.
None
Mr.
of those
Ziegler, my
exist.
only question for you is going to be, if I
Okay,
can
here's a
direct you to
question.
page 99 of your transcript. Is it accurate to say Hunter Biden received millions of dollars from Burisma?
Yes, that would be accurate.
Thank you. To the American people, I want to point out briefly that Hunter Biden has absolutely zero qualifications in this industry or in business in general, but he does have the big guy. November 2nd, 2015, in an email to Hunter, Burisma executive says that he's demanding a high-level U.S. official visit Ukraine to force out Shokin. This is in an email obtained from Hunter Biden's laptop. November 14th, 2015, Hunter Biden confirms the big guy's on the way. Vice President Biden's coming. Have no fear. December 7th through 9th, Biden has an official visit using U.S. tax dollars, threatens President Poroshenko to withhold $1 billion loan guarantee if Shokin isn't fired. He lied about this during the campaign. He specifically said it wasn't true. Sure enough, Shokin's fired. If you have any questions about whether he fired him, January 23rd of 2018, he brags about it years later. Ladies and gentlemen, American people, that's the scheme. That is the proof of concept. They replicated it again and again because they never dreamt Biden would be president. No one did. But he is our president. And because of his actions, because of him selling policy decisions to adversaries abroad for personal gain, he is vulnerable. He is vulnerable. And our national security is vulnerable because of it. We are not here to prosecute Hunter Biden. We don't care about Hunter Biden. We care about our country's national security decisions and whether our president is compromised. That's why we're here. That is why we're here.
Finally.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Conley from Virginia.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for being here today.
Forward, answering questions to him.
My friend from South Carolina said he was going to simplify it for the American people. I think he succeeded.
I think he didn't simplify it because that
so
really ruins our ability to say
to
things that are lies. Allow me to
Simmons just gets up and like leaves. They all do that. It's so aggravating.
Let's
You have
remember
to sit there and listen to them pontificate.
Yeah,
Donald
I
J.
went
Trump
to a town
over
hall
a
meeting with
phone
him where he
call
was
to the
bashing
president
gun rights, and they brought on all
of
these like
Ukraine,
moms who demand
wanting to
action.
get dirt
I guess
on
they're
this
all
very
looking for
subject,
action. They need to get
on this very
some
individual,
action, these
with
moms.
this very company.
They really hate guns
and
for
withheld
whatever reason.
military
They're out
equipment
there
desperately
crying
needed,
about
as
it,
we
and
now
he was out
know,
there affirming things that were
including
false.
Javelin missiles,
And
which are
he was
very
talking
useful
about
in anti-tank
so-called
warfare.
assault weapons
to
in
get it.
Virginia, of which I was carrying at
For
least
which he
2 at
was
that time on my person,
quite
and I just
correctly.
smiled.
But my
Anything that
friends
can
on
hold
that
more
side
than
of the
20
aisle
rounds is considered an assault
all
weapon in
voted
Virginia.
against
So
that.
I was
They had no problem.
pro assault
that
weapon
kind of
at this anti-gun
interference
thing. It's kind of fun.
that
I went up and
directly
identified
affects
myself to the
national
Fairfax County cops and told them what's up. And they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, what's up?"
Mr. Shapley and
This
Mr.
guy is
Wood
like, is he a
testified
cousin to Henry Waxman? Because they look shockingly alike other than the nostrils.
to criticism, ridicule,
Oh, here we
public disclosure, perhaps menacing comments because you've come forward. Is that correct?
Medicine comments?
No.
Menacing.
Oh, menacing comments.
Menacing comments.
Yes, sir.
And you too, Mr. Ziegler.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I have.
That must be a terrible feeling.
It's your fault.
And whoever does that,
He
I think
cares a lot.
agree,
He's very
is doing a disservice to the country and to you individually.
Mhm.
You're simply doing your duty as you see the
Where's the but? But
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah.
Ziegler?
I am doing my duty.
Yes. So can you imagine how the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia must feel?
Oh my God.
Or the district attorney in
Drink.
Manhattan must feel?
Dude,
Or
this
the
is
Drink up.
of the Department of Justice, Mr. Smith, must feel. When the very subject of an indictment or a pending indictment takes to public rallies and ridicules them by name, disparages them by name,
Drink again.
characterizes them by name, putting them and their families at the same risk you're experiencing. If it's wrong for these anonymous people to
You're like, I'm no
criticize
expert
you,
on what you're talking about.
it must certainly be wrong that the former president of the United States would demonize people doing their jobs just like you try to do yours as they see the light. You can disagree with their judgment, but it's not right to disparage
So
their
gross.
character. And what's so ironic about this hearing is, again, not one mention on the other side of the aisle about that malign behavior by the very subject of the indictment.
Oh man. Okay. Is there a question? No.
Speaking
So
of
let's turn
interference,
Gary down just a little bit. So let's just be
American
clear.
people know
If you were in a hearing
President
that is
Trump
talking about Hunter
pressured the
Biden
Justice
and
Department, which
malfeasance
we're
involved
talking
in the
about here today,
investigation,
like,
and you don't
wouldn't
bring
that
up
be
Trump,
wrong if
then
someone did
you
that?
are actually to blame
go
for
easy
bad things that
on
happened
his
to Alvin
friend
Bragg
Michael Flynn.
in New York. Got it.
We know
Anyone else?
when
wanna add to
President
that?
Trump's handpicked Attorney General William Barr took the reins, he
this is a
pressured
power hour, man. This
To reduce
you can't even do hard shots with the Trump references.
Roger
It's got to be
Stone.
just beer.
and glossed
Just
over
beer.
Robert Mueller's 2016
But
presidential election
the
report,
Mueller
saying
account.
it exonerated
But
the
not the
president.
Durham.
When in fact Robert Mueller explicitly said No, it did not. And
He also
listed
explicitly said he
10
couldn't charge anything
specific
related
items
to
of
collusion, but they've been running
obstruction
that
of
all day.
justice he recommended be pursued, and pointed out,
We're broke.
lest we
We're so broken.
misunderstand the pursuit part, he couldn't indict a sitting president according to DOJ guidelines. But he said in his report, an enterprising district attorney, once that president left office, might want to pursue it.
Yes,
According to
because he
recent
was
reporting in the New
a
York
he was a
Times,
scumbag. He's Robert
former
Mueller, and he
President
broke
Trump
the FBI.
explicitly told his chief of staff, John
Put
Kelly,
me on record for
that they,
saying that.
quote, ought to investigate and get the IRS on former civil servants that Mr. Trump considered his political enemies. Explicit testimony from his own chief of staff. But again, absolute silence on the other side of the aisle, including from the Ways and Means Committee, which purports to be so concerned about any hint of interference by any political entity or individual over the pristine work of the Department of Justice and the IRS.
Don't worry about questions.
Pristine work by the DOJ.
I might add,
Pristine
another
work.
piece of irony of this hearing that has been disparaged as the hobnob, boot on the neck of the American taxpayer for so long by the majority, and denied resources by the majority. As we speak, they cut $24 billion in the debt ceiling compromise agreement out of the $80 billion we provided to, in fact, give you more resources to do.
All right, Garrett,
your
what do you
job.
got? You
I
feel
yield
pretty
back.
good about what he has to say?
Gentleman yields back, and we're going to
It's
have
just
two
so
more
absurd. Like,
questions.
I'm
Request
sitting
of
here
the,
running it through my
witnesses.
head thinking, okay, am I looking at this objectively?
10-minute
Because
recess.
it's just getting frustrating how much they're invoking Trump or Flynn, the previous administration. That's not the point of this hearing.
From
And
Ohio.
they're hardly asking these guys any questions. And I guarantee you, I mean, look at the table. They got tons of information in front of them. And we're not getting any questions. It's just ridiculous.
Obligation.
Yes.
Surprisingly, my questions are actually going to be about your testimony.
Oh, here we go. We're going to
Subject
get
matter as
questions.
to why we're here. We're going to have a little shift. Actually, talk about what you're here for. I'm going to cite specific spots of your transcript testimony for each of you, but I don't think you'll have to read along. I'm going to do it for the purposes of the record. If I ask a question after having cited one and you want to refer to it and take a pause, please let me know, but I think pretty much we'll be able to follow along. Mr. Ziegler, you stated on page 17 of your transcript that you started this investigation in November of 2018 after reviewing bank reports related to another case that you were working on a social media company. Those bank reports identified Hunter Biden as paying prostitutes related to a potential prostitution ring. Also included those bank reports was evidence that Hunter Biden was living lavishly through his corporate bank account. Mr. Ziegler, when you make the statement, did you actually review these bank statements? This is not knowledge, in other words, that you got from someone else, that someone is relating to you what they said. You've actually looked at these documents.
That is correct. I actually looked at them.
Mr. Shapley, you testified on page 57 concerning the 2014 tax report that what Hunter Biden did is that he told Burisma to send that income to Rosemont Seneca Bohai, and that when the money came back to him, he booked it as a loan. You then go on to testify that it should have been taxable as soon as it became income from Burisma to Hunter, and whatever he did with it after that was really just a scheme to evade taxes for that year. You had that Rosemont Seneca Bohai and it did not book this as a loan itself, so Biden is treating it differently than they did. Did you look actually at those records? Is this actually your viewing of them to make this, to create this testimony?
Yeah, I looked at the evidence, especially Ziegler would be the expert that saw every single piece. But yes, I saw that evidence.
So, Mr. Ziegler, you also looked at these bank records with respect to the 2014 tax payment from Burisma.
Yes.
Mr. Shapley, you went on to say
Ziegler was
this is
like the main case agent,
I learned
it sounds
basic
like.
training nominee stuff, and in all of these defenses, it was a loan. You got to have a promissory note, you've got to have defined interest, and you've got to have repayments, and none of them were included. So Hunter Biden claims this is a loan, but the company he got it from doesn't claim it as a loan. There's no promissory note, there's no interest, there's no repayments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And they actually booked it, Rosemont Seneca Bohai booked it as a deduction.
As a deduction, meaning it would have been a payment to him, and so it would have been deductible to them.
Correct.
Income to him, then payable with tax. Excellent. So, but it wasn't just the bank documents that you looked at. You also had the opportunity to look at a memo from Eric Sherwin, and Eric Sherwin was actually Hunter Biden's accountant. And Mr. Shapley, on your testimony, page 57, you included Exhibit 4, a memo from Hunter's accountant saying, you're going to owe tax on this $400,000. So you've got the accountant even agreeing with your position that this is income and that there should have been income tax paid on it.
Correction to that is that I did not provide this document. This was provided by the committee.
Okay, excellent. Well, we have it then in the public testimony, public record of his accountant agreeing. So both of you, I think, indicate that the taxable amount of the $400,000 would have been about $125,000 that Hunter Biden would have had to pay on the $400,000 of income. Is that correct, Mr. Shapley?
That's correct.
Mr. Ziegler?
Yes, that's correct.
And you've had no evidence in all the records that you've looked at that those taxes were ever paid?
No, they were not.
Yeah, no, they were not paid by Hunter Biden.
And since the statute of limitations was allowed to run, Mr. Shapley, you go on to state that in order for him to pay this, he'd have to pay it voluntarily, that the government doesn't have a way to compel him to pay it because they've allowed the statute of limitations. It's not he got out of criminal, he got out of having to pay the tax, right?
That's correct. The civil and criminal statute of limitations have expired for that tax year.
So he has in his pocket $125,000 of money that should have gone to the federal government as taxes. When in the state of Ohio, you've got average family earning about $62,000 a household. That's like 2 full households of tax income that he got to keep in his pocket. The thing I wonder is that he could pay that today, right? Voluntarily.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, yes.
If he chose to voluntarily, yes, he could.
And perhaps Mr. President, who's supposed to be in charge of taxes coming to our nation and who so frequently tells us that the American people aren't paying enough taxes, might want to wander down the hall at the White House and turn to his son and say, Hunter Biden, why don't you pay your taxes for 2014? Because I got 2 men who just testified there's $125,000 owed and he ought to cut the check. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognize Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shapley and Mr. Ziegler, thank you for being here today. We're obviously going to talk a lot in this hearing about the investigation into Hunter Biden's taxes. So I think it's important that we set the scene and make it clear what type of investigation we're talking about. Mr. Ziegler, what year did you open the Hunter Biden investigation?
That was 2018, November of 2018.
2018. Thank you. The Department of Justice announced a plea agreement with Hunter Biden last month. So I estimate that you spent 4 or 5 years on this investigation, Mr. Ziegler?
That would be correct.
Mr. Ziegler, in your testimony before the Ways and Means Committee, you said that when your time working on the investigation ended, it was both, and him I'm quoting, 99.9% done, that's end quote, and that you had, here I'm quoting again, worked to complete
Why do we elect so many geriatrics?
Of the investigation, end
It
quote.
won't let go, man. The
Given
Rolling
this
Stones are going on tour
testimony, is
again.
it fair to say, Mr. Ziegler, that in the years that you spent on
I
the
also would
investigation,
like to know what policy violations
saw
on
it
YouTube we
nearly
violated.
to completion?
We're not on YouTube.
So that reference was to the
We're not
tax
anymore. We were.
tax investigation as far as all the work that we had done regarding that.
Yeah, so if you were watching on YouTube and you just
99% of
joined us,
that had been done
we had
to that
policy
date.
violations that shut down the stream.
Really?
Yeah, we're streaming out to
Shapley,
multiple channels right now.
Okay.
On page
What do we
12 of
violate?
your transcript,
Nobody knows.
of the transcript from
It don't
your
matter.
interview with the Ways and Means Committee, you described the IRS team that worked on this investigation as consisting of, and here I'm quoting, 12 elite agents who were selected based on their experience and performance in the area of complex, high-dollar international tax
She's going to
investments.
do the filibuster thing where she just reads
End
quotes
quote.
and says, did
Mr.
you say this?
Shapley, how serious are the investigations undertaken by these elite agents?
I'm not sure I understand how to answer your question. How serious?
How elite
Yes.
are the most elite?
Do they have to be
leaders?
very serious to be undertaken by these
Must they be
by
serious?
such elite agents?
Well, I think I can answer
Grave
this.
danger?
So,
Is there any other
got to
kind?
treat each taxpayer the same. That's the most important part. We're kind of the agents with the international tax group that come in there and that we have the expertise
Ziegler, are you serious?
to work these complex financial investigations. So whether they're more serious or we have to treat each person, each taxpayer the same. And that's what I try to do in my job.
Yeah, I was referring to these particularly complex.
I wanted to know about the seriousness.
High dollar.
I only know one
tax
word.
concerns. I understand you have to.
Did you
give
write this
equal
tweet,
treatment.
Mr. Ziegler?
It's
from Ziggy 115.
Mr. Ziegler.
Is this your account, Mr. Ziegler?
Investigations, a
It
quote
retweeted
complex
another tweet.
criminal tax investigation, end quote.
We're pretty sure one of our
And I
interns
understand
created
it
that Twitter account
an
last night. We're going to
agency
read
effort
it.
involving the IRS, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware, and DOJ's tax division in D.C. Mr. Ziegler, is it fair to say that this sort of interagency team is only assembled for serious and complex investigations?
So I can only speak to what happened in this particular investigation. The reason why other
So is
agents
she making the point
doing
and
an
thinking it's in her favor to say that this was a
that just
serious
depends on
violation by
the
Hunter
crimes
Biden?
we're investigating. Us at the IRS.
Sounds like she's
we're
arguing for
only
the wrong
agency
side of
in
her
our government
argument.
that is allowed to
Yeah.
investigate tax
It
crimes.
seems like it was serious
That's
and
why
it
you
probably
have
should
to
have
have-
been
you have a
resulting
tax
in more than
you have to
payment
have
of
the
2
IRS
months.
on that case.
Yeah, and you had lots of other agencies as well. Look, it sounds like Hunter Biden's taxes were subject to a great deal of scrutiny and rigorous review by a large team of expert investigators who had experience working complex cases. This investigation occurred over several years, spanned multiple agencies and divisions, and had an expert team. The time, personnel, and other sources devoted
Okay,
to this
what's your freaking
investigation
point,
make it
lady?
clear that this investigation was taken seriously by both the IRS and DOJ. While our witnesses here today may disagree
DOG.
with the attorney's decisions, it is undeniable that Hunter Biden was subject to a thorough and rigorous investigation. I thank you, and I
A
yield
serious one, too.
to the ranking member.
Gentlelady yields back, and as we promised the witnesses, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, at which point we will reconvene in approximately 10 minutes. House is now in recess.
Wow.
All right.
A lot of hard-hitting questions.
Good
Yeah, I'm going to kill the audio on that.
grief.
Let's get the panel up there. Garrett, I'm going to get you up first. Why don't you give me some
Oh.
feedback? How do you feel?
I need a drink, like 7 or 9 or 12, and I don't have any. But this is rough to just sit here and listen to because they're hardly asking any questions, and it's clear that, well, I said this in my deposition. These guys are making it clear as well. The issues we're bringing forward aren't partisan, or at least shouldn't be partisan in nature. Obviously, Ziegler, he's gay, he's a Democrat. Based on what has happened so far, I think he was probably the lead case agent on this case.
That's what he said.
Oh, he did say that? Okay. So he got to a point where he said, okay, as an 1811, because I think that's what they are, right? He gets to this point where he's like, look at all the political interference that is happening. I'm going to try to go through my chain of command to rectify this somehow. And that didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work. Just like we all experience, obviously, different subject matter. I think this Hunter stuff it's very, I think it's kind of scary actually for them to be in the position that they're in. And he still says, okay, I have to put those things aside because the core function of my job is being hindered. And as a criminal investigator for the federal government, that cannot stand. And so he goes to Congress. And now they're up there to testify, and they're hardly getting any questions asked. It's just a citizen. It's very frustrating for me to just watch and listen to them bloviate about Trump and Flynn.
I mean, Flynn had a lot to do with that, don't you think? This was important to talk about Flynn.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Hold on, I'm getting some weird feedback here. Oh, it looks like our YouTube. It looks like our YouTube is back on streaming, and so I was getting like double feedback into my ears of myself talking.
Oh, good enough.
But,
Yeah, I actually shared the YouTube. I tagged them on Twitter, and I just said they're pathetic and that their failure to exist is dead. They're a great platform at every level. I got Ryan back in here. Let me pivot over and start the double up in yours. I want to get George on here because George has been hydrating and getting his rage quotient ready. George, I'm gonna pull you up to the main screen. What do you got, man? Like, what's your takeaways from this nonsense?
And it is nonsense, Kyle. I mean, it's just, this is all theater by the Democrats to get their message out that this is all about a united front to protect Donald Trump and to go after Joe Biden, who I forget who the hack was who made the point, who wasn't even president at that time.
But he wasn't president.
And then the Democrat narrative is, or I'm sorry, the Republican narrative is that there was some prosecutorial malfeasance here, yada yada yada. But typical of the Republicans, they're like a herd of cats. Like, how hard would it be just to get together for a 15-minute planning session to say, hey, this is how we want to attack this. This is how we want to go about it. But instead, you get every Republican questioner comes up there and they ask different things about different things with different approaches, and obviously I'm not a Democrat fan, but, they're all on task, which is smear Trump, defend Biden. None of this is about prosecutorial decisions that were made, and it's so simple. I mean, Coombs and Carper were the ones who selected Weiss, and Trump just signed off on it. He's not a Republican appointee, but their narrative is there, meaning the Democrats. Their narrative is on message. It pains me to say this, but they're good at it.
Well, we're able to at least do our drinking game really successfully. George, are you a registered Republican?
No, I'm not.
Oh, weird. But how can you be a Republican operative if you're not a registered Republican?
Because I vote the wrong way.
Got it. Do you think it gives any credibility that this guy, Mr. Ziegler out there, Joseph Ziegler, is a gay Democrat that just feels like he wants to do his job, in his own words?
Why does that even matter? Honestly, I've always been. I don't care. Who you sleep with, who you're married to. Matter of fact, I was so happy that they passed a gay marriage law because misery needs company. Welcome to my hell. But I mean, I don't care. It shouldn't matter. It's all noise. That's all noise.
Yeah. All right, Steve, you're up. You've been in the bullpen warming up now for two pitchers. What do you got?
All right, so
you got your glasses on. I didn't realize you had your glasses on. This is serious.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I got to do the Jim Jordan.
All right, do it. Bring it to us.
Okay, so I'll go from Clark Kent to Superman in a second. From having been in the room, those guys paid their own way to get there. Like, not cheap. They stay the night in DC, and then they have to sit there and listen to these guys pontificate for minutes. And apparently it's 10 minutes in the oversight. At least Garrett and I was like a 5-minute limit for each person. Right. But it's got to be super frustrating. And I think having been in that room, you kind of lose perspective on time. Like that the day we were there, it didn't feel that long to me. But now being on an outsider, I was like, holy mackerel, like this is
my God. It was 3.5 hours last time. I remember sitting there just going like, these poor guys are just sitting there. But you're right. You're in the fight at that point. You got to
you just like, and you're looking at the clock actually running. So like, you're not really, you just survive 5 minutes, and then it all kind of aggregates. It's like contractions during a pregnancy and delivery.
Yes, I'm sure women who are watching this are going to say that's exactly what it's like.
It's just totally, it's right.
Testifying in front of Congress, it's basically like having a baby.
Less pain. But I think to sort of echo what George said, it sort of shows how there's like not, this is all a show, because if they actually were interested in doing a hearing that was going to be fruitful and demonstrating it, they would work together. You know, similarly, like structure the time so that, if from my perspective, they should just be telling a story from start to finish of like, this is how this worked. And that guy Timmons sort of tried to sum it all up really quick. And like, as this is a proof of concept, you know, the Bidens ran this scheme where there would be a problem in a foreign country. They send over there, and Biden influences it through policy, and his family gets paid. Okay, show us that. Like, have a whiteboard. Like, on this day, this happened. On this day, this happened. And just do a timeline. And then pause for the 10 minutes that Democrats got to go and say Trump, 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 and then come back to the same timeline for the next person. And even if you need to let everybody yield their time back to one person, so it's one united voice to do it. But they're not going to do that, because they all have to get their clip that they can send out to their donor list and say, look, I was in on the hearing, and the top line of it was, this was a big bombshell hearing, and they're hoping that really nobody watches it. And the challenge for these guys also in oversight is it's taxes, man. Like, people's eyes are going to gloss over and they're rolling the back of their head, even if they present a good case. They're not doing that.
Do any of you guys play golf at all? I feel like you're probably not golfers, but who golfs? Okay.
I mean, I have golfed
Let me ask
before.
You a question. You might take up golfing. Do you have this time? So, okay, we're going to start with Steve. Steve, I want you on the record. Hunter Biden wrote off his sex club as a golfing membership. Is a sex club an iron or a wood?
Well, I mean, I think it would be a copper beryllium wedge that actually had toxins that would kill you.
Roger. Okay, you're on record. Ryan on. Hold on. Let's pull Ryan in. Same question, Ryan. Is it an iron or a wood when you write off your sex club as a golfing membership?
Wood.
You think it's wood?
100%.
You would say that, wouldn't you?
I would.
George, you got a non-golfer's take on that? I actually do golf. I'm awful at it, but since both have already been taken, I'm going to go with it's a trap, whether it be a water trap or a sand trap. It's no bueno.
Probably water, based on the wetness of it.
Yeah.
Ball washer, Garrett. You got to go ball washer.
Okay, hold on. We got Garrett. Garrett, same question. What do you got?
Well, I asked Heidi, and she said my sex club is definitely a wood. So I don't know.
Keeps returning girls to the fairway.
Yeah. Yep.
Just driving it. All right, so we're making a little bit of light of this, but this is pretty tough to watch. I think, as you guys see, we're in recess right now. The Oversight and Accountability, as Steve accurately stated, not a very sexy or fun type of hearing to watch. And yet we had a couple of fireworks in the beginning, and then we've been able to successfully execute this drinking game. Do you think anybody who's watching this, and appropriately, like they're playing by the rules in this drinking game, is anybody still sober at this point?
What's the drinking game? I must have missed that part. How are we playing
Ryan,
this?
okay, hold on. Steve's going to explain the drinking game.
It's any reference to Donald Trump in a hearing about Hunter Biden's tax crimes. You got to take a drink. And at this point, I counted like 8 references in Raskin's opening statement. So I immediately defaulted away from hard booze. You got to go just beer, power hour style. I think you're still going to knock it back at least a 6-pack.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
I'm going to scroll through and share some of the highlights from the chat here. But Ryan, what are you working on in the background there? How's LFA TV holding up right now?
Good, man. We just ended the stream with almost 800 people in it, so it was awesome.
All right, fantastic. So Pesky Mom said that Steve was cracking her up. She's a mom of 5. Well done, Pesky. We have to outbreed them. We've got FBI Panty Raid, who is a regular out here, has said that Steve's baby face makes him feel better about his lack of facial hair. It's the only thing that he's gotten out of this hearing, is feeling a little bit better about not having a beard. Garrett, you had a beard comment a minute ago. What was your beard comment?
Mine was fear the beard. Is that what I said?
Yeah. Why do we have to fear the beard? What?
Because with great beard comes great responsibility. So, so you have to just have a humble reverence for the beard, and sometimes that's associated as fear, like in the Old Testament. That type of fear.
I knew you were going to bring scripture into this. I really appreciate that. We've got.
Well, yeah, you know me. I have to bring in.
Go ahead. Oh, did you freeze on me? Of course you did. Garrett's stream is it's a little bit shady right now. Let me also say that we got the Observer 777 who said, "Did anyone get to see Biden close his eyes and mumble when he was trying to talk to the Israeli president?"
Made a short out of it.
So, guys, if you're not following Ryan, if you are not following Ryan's, I would. Where are you best on Twitter? He's best on Instagram, which I referred to. I told him the other day. I said you spend all your time basically trying to compete for the eyeballs of dudes who went there to look for like firearms videos and online prostitutes, because that seems to be what's on Instagram as far as I can tell. But also Ryan Matta is there. If you go, it's Shots by Matta. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, Ryan Matta News, I think, on Instagram, or Shots by Matta is my handle there.
Yeah, and he's got some great short videos if you just have a few seconds and you want to kind of walk away with some direct quotes. George, did you have something you wanted to throw into the fray?
Just a sense of frustration. I mean, these hearings, I recognize the importance of oversight, but, Trump's looking at 4 different charges in 4 different locations at the federal, state, and local level. At some point in time, the Republicans need to move beyond these hearings, but I've got a lot smarter people here in the chat and actually participating in the stream. Like, I don't know how the Democrats control the Department of Justice. I don't know how the Republicans ever move beyond hearings. I mean, it just seems, I know we have to do something, but it seems like quite an exercise in futility. No? Or am I just being a Debbie Downer?
No, I think that we'd be foolish if we thought. I keep seeing these things as like their auditions to get on Fox News. Like, they seem like they're out there trying to get their sound bites. That's why they're going to go out and say as much as they can, because they're hoping they're either going to make a appearance on Fox News that night from the clip that they just gave, or Fox News is going to say, "Oh God," or maybe it's MSNBC or whoever else is going to bring them on. There's like 12 options they could have if they're Democrats, but they're trying to say, can we just have that person because of that brilliant statement that was given that had nothing to do with it? Look how badly they attacked Trump in this hearing about 2 men who work for the IRS. Probably one of the most unsexy jobs you can have, being an 1811, a special agent investigator dealing with tax crimes. And I've worked with IRS special agents, and they were competent, but it didn't seem like a job I would want to trade places with in any way, shape, or form.
And that guy Ziegler, man.
Yeah,
Ziegler, he
seems like
went to college and got an MBA to become a special agent for the IRS.
That's a thing.
Well, and he worked for Ernst & Young. I mean, that's
he did the
high six-figure
thing.
job.
I'm sure what he did was the same thing that was thrown to us, because I was an accounting major. They come to your college and they try to recruit you to go be like a junior associate, and you go to your internship where you party it up all summer long before your senior year. After you graduate, you get your job there, and that's when they put you to work for 80 hours a week, and you're kind of on the trajectory for making a junior partner within like 8 to 10 years, something like that. But he probably did that, and
everybody wants to be a junior partner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's
why do you think that the Democrats come on here? Is it they just come on here and they get their talking points, so that way when CNN runs a news cycle tonight, they're just going to show the highlights of what the Democrats were saying and try to spin this around and make it look like the only people that are coming out were people appointed by Trump? Or what's the logic behind that?
The Democrats have no other choice but to attack the messenger.
We're back.
Steve, Garrett, and I all have experienced it firsthand. It looks like are they coming back into session, Kyle?
Yeah, they're coming back.
So we're going to bring them back up and see if anything of value happens in this round.
Enforce the laws of the United States. Mr. Shapley, the statute of limitations has run out on felony charges for tax years 2014 and 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there were huge tax liabilities for those tax years, correct?
There were tax liabilities, yes.
Playing on 2 screens?
You didn't have access to all of the evidence
that's YouTube.
related to those sources of income.
Based on the limitations placed on us by Delaware U.S. Attorney's
Nope,
Office,
it's only going on one side. Stand by, folks. We'll figure it out. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't hear an echo, but
recently
I don't know.
Maybe you need.
I'm listening to it on 2 places.
Yeah, you are.
Which is a form used by the FBI
killing
to
me, right?
memorialize information related to it by a confidential human source. This FD
All right, looks
1023
like we're going to have
form was
Palmer bring the
created in
energy for
June of
this opening
2020.
here, going back in the second
This is not a
session.
tip sheet. It's
I
not,
met him, man. He was actually less
not a suggestion box.
energetic
It's
when
a
I met him.
legitimate source
We got
used
the
by
less
the
energetic
FBI.
piece here.
And it was used here. Mr. Shapley, did you ever review the June 2020 FD 1023
I love the
form?
voice changer.
In the present.
I said in the chat on Rumble that I listened
Well,
to
I
your
reviewed the
coverage
form,
of our
and
hearing
the
that
startling
night in the hotel
allegation
room, and the
What would you have
your
done
voice changer and yours and Tracy's commentary helped get me through.
stream of income? Would that have
Glad we could do
constituted
that.
an additional area of investigation?
So, since I've never seen the document, I only know what's been reported.
Right.
So, I can say that there were investigative steps that involved President Biden that were not allowed to be taken, and that information like this would have been really helpful to have from investigators, by investigators when we received any pushback, when we were asked to take names out of document requests or search warrants. It would have been nice to have information that showed why, that helped prove why those names needed to be in those requests.
Well, I think it's material to your investigation because it was, after all, other information that led you, related to Hunter Biden's lifestyle, that led you to launch the investigation to begin with. Was there other evidence in this investigation that you were denied access to?
Yes, there was.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
So one piece was the Hunter Biden laptop. There's a memorandum that I documented contemporaneously in my House Ways and Means Committee testimony that states what Assistant United States Attorney Leslie Wolf told us on that day. I think it was September 3rd of 2020. And that's that they had information from the laptop that they were not providing to the investigators.
Yeah, can I add something on that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Ziegler.
So when it came to questions, as a part of the investigation, we interviewed a lot of people. And as a part of that investigation, you want to feel free to ask questions. It should be an open environment. I realize that there are some attorney-client privileged information involved in this, but there was an environment when we were interviewing witnesses where you were afraid to ask questions that could lead to the presidential campaign. And this is after the campaign's over. So questions like that, it was restricted, and so things like that we were limited to talking about.
Well, it appears to me that you learned about the FD 1023 form through public domain sources. And I can only imagine how you felt about having been denied another piece of relevant information. And I think it's important that the committee understand that you guys who are trying to do due diligence, who are trying to faithfully execute the laws of the United States, were denied evidence relevant to your investigation. I think the 1023 form is a very important piece, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask Mr. Ziegler, at one point you wanted to move the investigation to the District of Columbia. Is that correct?
From the very onset of the investigation, yes.
Why did you want to move it to DC?
So are we referring, there are two different scenarios in where DC is involved. So when we first initiated the investigation, and then when we referred prosecution. So which time period? So as far as venue for the tax case, so venue for this case, we saw that when we did our analysis, that venue was either in California or DC. Well, I guess at the time in the beginning it was DC. So that was where we wanted to start our investigation, was in DC.
But you were told that Attorney Weiss could bring charges anywhere. Was that your understanding?
Okay, so that fast forward to March of 2022, I had a phone call with the prosecutors assigned to the case. They said that our prosecution report went to low-level people at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. Those low-level people reviewed it, said, hey, we're going to assist you with this. Here's what we're going to do to help you finish the case here in DC. A few days later, I get another phone call, and it's from the same assigned attorney, and they tell me that now that the U.S. attorney has reviewed it, that not only is it a no, but it's a no, you should not work this investigation in the District of Columbia.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it appears to me that Mr. Ziegler was misled, and that his instincts were right, that it should have been moved to the District of Columbia. And again, I want to thank you for your courage and your fidelity to the law. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Khanna from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Shapley, for being here. I understand you see it as your duty to have the strict enforcement of tax laws. Is it true that you have often disagreed with charging decisions before?
I have agreed with charging decisions before.
I'm saying, is it true that you have often disagreed? Your recommendations have often been disregarded before when it comes to charging decisions. Is that true?
I don't think disregarded is an accurate representation.
They have been, people in your own IRS have disagreed with your decisions often before. Is that accurate?
That's not accurate.
Is it not true that the tax counsel in the criminal department has disagreed often with your decisions in the past?
Oh, criminal tax attorneys,
Yes.
And as I stated in my
So how often have they disagreed, in your opinion, with your recommendation decisions?
Very often, criminal tax attorneys, yes.
Can you give us a percentage of how often you've said we ought to charge someone and they've said, no, that may not be a good idea?
Yeah, I would say, just ballparking, a vast majority of what we do, and that's why they're advisory. And
do you have respect for them?
And they're advisory.
Do you have respect for them?
Most prosecutors
It's a simple question, sir. Do you respect those colleagues or not?
Often their opinion is not respected by me.
Do you respect
and
them?
prosecutors.
So do you have more respect for them or Mr. Weiss?
I don't.
I just think because you have a history of
Here we go.
wanting
Smear
to
the
charge
whistleblower. Here we
people,
go.
and then people pushing back. By your own testimony under oath, you said about 90% of the time people are pushing back on what you want to do. And I'm not questioning. You are a stickler for the law. It reminds me of Les Mis, and the famous person who wanted to get the person who had a sandwich.
Got it.
And then all those times you've got people
Pop culture references.
and you say, well, they're not.
Where you got to go.
Yeah, well,
do you respect Mr. Weiss?
So the criminal tax attorneys, I've never had a case that they declined, that they did not concur with, that we didn't ignore their request and move forward with the.
But at 90%, they have.
Yeah, they don't matter. They're irrelevant.
Yeah.
Can you imagine working for an agency where they
just asking
tell
on
you
the
not
media,
to bring charges on any case?
Testimony under oath.
Yes, I
that,
can.
You have
So can
never
you.
spoken to the Washington Post any report on this
called
matter, correct?
Most
That's correct.
FBI, CI
Do you know?
investigations.
Have you spoken to any media
And
outlet
all FARA
on this matter?
violations except Flynn.
I have spoken after the House Ways and Means Committee.
Before that,
released
have you
testimony.
spoken to any media journalist on this matter?
Absolutely not.
Do you know of any colleague of yours at the IRS who has spoken to any journalist?
Oh, we're
on
going to
this
hunt
matter?
Absolutely
whistleblowers.
not.
Good.
Do you know of any investigation into the leaks on this matter?
Why would he?
So the October 6th leak, I was the person who referred it to our Inspector General. There was
Do you know
also
any of your colleagues who
leak
are under
on December 9th of 2020, around the day of action.
Do you know if any of
that
your
I know
colleagues are
that
under
the IRS
investigation?
Inspector General and DOJ
Sorry, if I could
IG
just
was looking
finish.
Just steamroll him.
Do you know if any of your colleagues are under investigation for that leak?
No,
He would have no way of knowing that.
under
It's
investigation.
supposed to be confidential.
How would he know that?
And just for the record, then it is your testimony under oath that you have never spoken to any media person before the House.
Here comes. They'll send a letter to him like they did for me, or they'll refer him to DOJ like they did me for
Write an
perjury.
affidavit to House Ways and Means Committee stating the same. I've said it to our Inspector General's office as well.
I appreciate that.
also
I just
said
want to
it,
make a final point
to
on
House
this.
Ways
I
and
mean,
Means.
one, I think what.
Mr. Chairman, could we mind if I?
Yeah, can the gentleman answer the question you asked, Mr.
I
Connor?
just don't want my time to be affected.
If you're granting him the time, Mr. Chairman, but that's
You give
unusual.
me,
I've never
I
seen
want
that.
a minute to wrap up. If you're gonna give me-
Okay, you have a
rules.
minute.
Hold on. Where's the rules?
Okay. They,
Point of order.
Here's the point. I think the whole thing, our ranking member Raskin summarized this.
I would like to see a chairman with stones just say the minority doesn't get to ask questions.
And this is, we have a prosecutorial system where you don't get to decide, I don't get to decide. We have a whole system. And it turns out that often your recommendations on who should be charged differ from some of the other folks. And that's what's happened in this case. And as your testimony here, you yourself said, you think
let's not forget about the fact that it's
you don't
Biden
question or him.
That
and
has
I think
nothing
on
to
the
do with
optics issue that some of my colleagues have brought up, I mean, obviously, Attorney
From a
General
news cycle standpoint, though, this is probably the most effective questioning the Democrats have had.
U.S. attorney potentially bringing
trying to
charges
impugn the
against his
honor.
rival's son.
Procedural
That's a real legitimate thing to do. So I guess my view here is we're spending hours on a disagreement about whether to charge someone. We have a whole democratic process that does that. You don't get the my final question, Mr. Shapley.
It's not
do
a
you think
democratic
you
process,
should decide
Their
who gets
best argument
charged?
against this
Do you
guy
think
is
that should be
that
the charging
they're
officer?
going to attack the whistleblower.
Each time you say this is
As
a
always.
disagreement,
As
you
always.
say it multiple times. It doesn't make it true.
Yes.
We've testified under oath here about the prosecutors agreeing with charging felony charges on multiple occasions. And just to say this is a disagreement would be a misrepresentation.
My last question, though, who do you think gets to? Do you think you should have that final decision, or a prosecutor should have the final decision?
No, I am a special agent for IRS criminal investigation. I do not make the final decision on whether to charge or not.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a second? So,
Yes.
In terms of our criminal tax
Point of
return-
order, Mr. Chairman, just, are we instituting a new rule in the committee? 'Cause I've never seen this happen before.
Okay. I
so-
didn't know if it was to answer, Mr. Are you finished?
Someone else
No, no.
can follow
Okay.
up. I've
All right,
seen someone
okay.
could say.
Yeah,
give them the
you're
extra-
correct. Rules.
Yep.
Gentlemen's time's
Mark,
expired. Chair now
throw some
recognizes
stones.
Ms. Green for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we begin, I would like to let the committee and everyone watching at home that parental discretion is advised.
Oh God!
I'd like to remind
Oh,
everyone.
man.
our
Let him
oversight-
finish. Let him sacrifice your time for once in your
all
life.
parts of the federal government,
No, she needs to talk.
including their Department of Justice
Not a fan
and their
of her.
willingness to
This
prosecute.
is it. You got to be the mean girl in Congress. You got to be the mean girl.
Motivated.
Let the guy
I
talk.
would also like to say
Parental
that
discretion is advised.
once proof of a crime is presented,
I don't know
no
anything about the
prosecution
things you're
should be
talking
denied,
about, but I got
no matter who
elected,
the
and
person
I do
is.
CrossFit, so I could
To
do
the
some
whistleblowers,
Man, I'm glad the Freedom Caucus booted her.
encouraged to come to
Yeah.
the committee today.
She's the
And your
worst.
commitment to truth.
The
I have
eyes
great
she gives to
support.
McCarthy, though, man.
I would like to talk with you both about Hunter Biden and his tax write-offs with his law firm, Owasco. I would like to ask Mr.
She doing
Ziegler, when did
ayahuasca?
you start your investigation? And your
Sounds like it.
testimony it was November 2018. Is that correct? Yes.
Owasco.
Yes, that's
Owasco?
correct.
Thank you. During your testimony with the House Ways and Means Committee, you stated that through bank records, you identified Hunter Biden was paying prostitutes related to a potential prostitution ring. Is that correct?
Prostitutes.
Yes or
Oh,
no?
boy.
Yes, that's correct.
I've also reviewed those same bank reports.
You think she got on
commonly
oversight
referred
because
to
she backed
as
McCarthy?
SARS, suspicious activity reports.
Yes. Oh,
And I'm
she's got a
very
sign.
troubled by them. We read
Too small.
thousands of them in the Treasury.
She's setting
This
herself up to be
particular
memed.
excerpt from a SARS report talks about human trafficking. And in regards to Hunter Biden and Owasco,
That guy's gonna
and,
take it.
and
Tell her,
payments.
put it down. Put it down. The memes are coming.
What's even more
take
troubling to me
direction.
is that the Department of Justice
Suspendables are
brought
equal
no
opportunity
charges
bashers. Nobody can
against
tell you
Hunter
that's
Biden that will vindicate the rights of these women who are clearly victims under the law. I would like to talk about in your
Are they,
prior
though? I
testimony.
mean, what if they
you
were willingly
stated
doing
that the prosecutorial team was investigating violations of the Mann Act. Is that correct, Mr. Ziegler?
That is correct.
All right. That clears it up.
Regarding the Mann Act, if a person is transported across state lines for sexual activity, such as prostitution, that could be a violation of a federal law. Is that correct?
I actually recently looked at the federal law regarding Mann Act, and I believe that that is correct, but I would refer you to the DOJ manual.
Thank you. I would like to present this to the committee. This is showing Hunter Biden paying for a victim's United flight from LA to Dulles. This was I believe this is a violation of the Mann Act. This is Hunter Biden's, this is his proof that he
Now she's a
bought the
prosecutor.
ticket. He bought it for this woman right here. He flew her from Los Angeles to Washington on June 14th, flew her back to Los Angeles, California on June 15th of 2018. And I would like to point out that if he
lost
was
her place.
purchasing her a plane ticket for sex and traveling across state lines, do you believe that to be a violation of the Mann Act, Mr. Ziegler?
So I can talk to specifically what's in my
He's a tax guy. He doesn't.
Mann Act. So I know we were compiling the information together.
Yes, but Mr. Ziegler, travel as the law states, by the code of the law, it states traveling, paying someone to go across state lines is prostitution.
She's not
It's
an
a
expert,
violation
and
of
he
the
just
Mann
told
Act.
you he's
Let me
not.
just move on just one more
Good idea.
second
Good idea.
here.
That's a good idea.
So when Hunter Biden paid for this woman
Did she get these from
do
Marco
this-
Polo's?
to
thing?
travel across state lines from California to Washington, D.C. on June 15th, this is a violation of the Mann Act. This was prostitution. Let me continue.
No.
Did
it's not
Hunter
a violation
Biden
until
also
it's been
use his
adjudicated by a
company,
jury.
Owasco PC, to pay prostitutes?
Can you hold on one second?
But my time is running out.
Chairman?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll give you this.
We'll
additional
pause your time.
So bad.
I need my 5 minutes.
Here's the thing. I actually like that that he's going to be precise and he's going to look up and he's going to talk to counsel about
So
what
regarding Mann Act violations, what we can do is, given by the statute, we can turn those over to the House Ways and Means Committee, and then we can they can decide to vote to turn them over to you.
There you go.
Regarding Mann Act.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Ziegler.
Completely
So
reasonable
talking about
take.
Hunter Biden using his company, Owasco PC, to pay prostitutes, this is also a suspicious activity report showing that victim one, the woman that was paid for prostitution, that traveled from California to Washington, D.C., paid for by Hunter Biden. This is an excerpt from a SARS report that we've read in the Treasury, and I think you all have looked at these too, showing that victim one was supposedly an employee of Owasco. But I would like to point out, this is not really what most paralegals do for law firms. And
There's her
it's
clip.
very
That'll
serious
be that.
Hunter Biden
Correct.
was paying this woman through his law firm and then writing it off as business tax exemptions. Most people write off, their write off things for their taxes through their businesses, like a meal or say office supplies. But can you confirm for me that Hunter Biden had written off payments to prostitutes through his law firm, Owasco?
I appreciate the question given by the statute. I'm limited in my testimony today, and I respectfully would need to turn those records over to the House Ways and Means Committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ziegler. One last question. You referred to one of the assistants as West Coast assistant. I believe this is the West Coast assistant. Could you agree with that?
So I can tell you that there were deductions for what we believe to be escorts, and then that $10,000 golf club membership. Yes, that was not a golf club membership. That was for a sex club payment.
That was for a sex club payment. Payments such as this
Iron or wood?
It's a wood.
from
She should have followed up with
Hunter
that.
Biden to prostitutes. Also, Mr. Shapley.
Come on.
Mr. Chairman, we're at 1 minute and 53 seconds over. As long as Ms. Ocasio-Cortez can get equal time, she can keep going.
I will let Ms. Green wrap up 5
busy
seconds.
holding up these
and then
horrible
I'll
Yeah,
give Mr.
that's a
Mukume
good one
additional
right there.
time.
Thank you,
that.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shapley, you started an investigation into Hunter Biden, codenamed Sportsman, which opened in November of 2018. It was an offshoot of an investigation the IRS was conducting into a foreign-based amateur online pornography platform. This is evidence
Chairman,
of Hunter Biden
Chairman, it's
making
overtime
sex.
and it's
Excuse me, this is my time.
unbecoming of-
Making
It's not your
time.
pornography.
Said that.
Should we be displaying this, Mr. Chairman, in the committee?
Gentle lady's time's expired, and
Yeah, you should be displaying it for everybody to see.
2.5 minutes. He can have it if he wants to yield some to Ms. Ocasio-Cortez when she goes. She can have it. We'll make it right. 2.5
Comer
minutes.
just do
I'll
like
have it for
the
2.5
Spanish
minutes.
accent when he says
Chair
the
recognizes
President
Mr.
Cortez?
Fume.
Yeah,
Point of order. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds like cultural appropriation.
These
My
people are-
understanding is that
Ocasio-Cortez.
this committee was provided the suspicious activity reports on the condition